Good morning, colleagues. Let's resume the GEF Council. So the first order of business is agenda item 3, GEF Business Plan and Corporate Budget for FY24. You all have received the amended draft decision from the Secretariat that included language as requested by council members. So it's been circulated. If there are any questions or comments about the amended decision, please raise your flags. Seeing none, it is the will of the council to adopt the amended decision as circulated by Secretariat. Thank you. Now we go to agenda item 12, the 4-year work program and budget of the GEF Independent Evaluation Office. The amended draft decision was circulated by email by the Secretariat. Are there any questions or comments about the amended decision? Seeing none, it is adopted. Thank you. We go to agenda item 15, preparing the GEF to serve as part of the financial mechanism of the international legally binding instrument under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea on the conservation and sustainable use of marine biological diversity of areas beyond national jurisdiction. Gosh, it's a mouthful.
Better known as BB&J.
Or BB&J, and sometimes with my kids, peanut butter and jelly. But of course, it's a P instead of B. Anyways, I would like to invite Ms. Chizuru Aoki to introduce document GEF C6412.
Good morning, colleagues. It is my pleasure to introduce agenda item 15 on BB&J. Many of you remember the agenda item from the last council about the BB&J. So there has been, thank you, development since then. And this particular agenda item today here is to prepare the GEF to serve as part of the financial mechanism of a new convention, a mouthful one, dedicated to the conservation and sustainable use of marine biological diversity of areas beyond national jurisdiction, also known as a BB&J. Okay, this is going to be a joint presentation between myself and my colleague, Georgios Sapianskas. So let me just update you all on the latest development on the BB&J. We're very happy that the BB&J agreement was formally adopted in New York on June 19, 2023, and you can see the photo from that particular adoption session here. So part of the adopted text for the BB&J includes an article on funding, and we have excerpted that and put it in the on the right-hand side. And in essence, Article 52 established the financial mechanism for this particular convention. And it reads as follows: a mechanism for the provision of adequate, accessible, new and additional and predictable financial resources under this agreement is hereby established. The mechanism shall assist developing states, parties in implementation of this agreement. And this particular mechanism will actually include 3 sources. One is a voluntary trust fund, which is in essence covering travel. The second is a special fund, which is to be established. And the third one is the Global Environment Facility Trust Fund, which we all are familiar with. And also, in terms of what the financial mechanism would do, and what the GEF will be expected to do, there is in the text clarification on kinds of activities to be supported by both the special fund and the GEF trust fund. And I'm going to pass it on to my colleague, Georgios, to deliver the rest.
Good morning to all. Let me first recall what was agreed as part of the GEF 8 replenishment package. Similar to GEF 7, the programming direction for GEF 8 includes an objective dedicated to areas beyond national jurisdiction within the international waters focal area. This entry point has a notional allocation of $34 million out of a total notional allocation of $565 million for the international waters focal area. The IW strategy also includes a placeholder specifically for the BBNJ agreement, which is included in its entirety there, and which reads at the request of the negotiating parties, once negotiations have concluded and with agreement of the GEF Council, support national ratification and implementation of the instrument. So that was what was agreed as part of the GEF 8 replenishment package. And as shown by this timeline, BBNJ is not a new topic for the Council. There was notably an informal lunch with the president of the negotiations at the June 2022 Council, a virtual Council briefing in August last year, and a formal agenda item on the previous Council. Last December, the Council notably decided that if requested, the Council would welcome the GEF becoming the financial mechanism or part of the financial mechanism of the instrument within the framework of the GEF. As explained since last Council, negotiations were finalized, the BBNJ agreement was adopted, and it is to be open for signature during the high-level segment of the UN General Assembly next September. The timeline also shows the upcoming GEF assemblies. The GEF Assembly is indeed the only body mandated in the GEF governance to amend the GEF instrument, which would be needed to add the BBNJ agreement to the list of conventions the GEF serves. Against this backdrop, the GEF Secretariat prepared for your consideration today a Council document and a recommended decision with three main elements. First, the document summarizes the implication for the GEF to be part of the BBNJ financial mechanism and proposes corresponding amendments to the GEF instrument. Second, the Council document contains a proposal to operationalize the provisions of the GEF 8 programming directions related to BBNJ that I presented earlier in an earlier slide. The GEF has provided national ratification support to developing countries for several multilateral environmental agreements, and we know that timely support will be critical for the rapid entry into force of the BBNJ agreement. Third, and lastly, the Council document summarizes GEF's past and ongoing support that is relevant to the BBNJ agreement. And I will just highlight a few items. The Council document notably highlights the GEF's strong track record derived from its mandate to provide grants and concessional funding to achieve global environmental benefits in international waters. To date, the GEF has invested more than $1.2 billion in the management of shared marine resources through the international waters focal area. Since GEF 4, the GEF has invested over $80 million to directly address management of biodiversity in the areas beyond national jurisdiction, leveraging over $500 million of co-funding, including $85 million from the private sector. As detailed in the Council document, the GEF's past and current support aligns closely with the function identified in the BBNJ agreement for both the special fund. It is notably the case in the area of marine genetic resources and on area-based management tools. In GEF 7 alone, the GEF approved $370 million of grants for 56 projects to support the creation or improve management of 1.4 billion hectares of marine protected area. Finally, let me walk you through the recommended Council decision. It is recommended for the Council to first welcome the invitation from the Intergovernmental Conference on BBNJ for the GEF to be part of the financial mechanism for the agreement. Second, authorize the use of up to $34 million for the funding of ratification support and early action activities for the BBNJ agreement to be programmed during GEF 8. And third, to request the GEF Secretariat to develop initial guidelines for enabling activities and ratification support projects and present them as a decision document for the 65th Council. Please note that the document for this Council already provides a high-level description of what ratification support would look like. In line with decision for the 44th and 45th Council for early support to the Minamata Convention, the proposal is for the Council to come back with a more detailed guidelines at the next Council. Upon adoption of those guidelines in the December Council, the GEF would be able to notify eligible countries that they can start submitting projects for ratification support. And finally, it is suggested that the Council recommends to the Assembly an amendment to the instrument. The proposed amendment is in line with the amendments that were made in 2002, 2010, and 2014 for the Stockholm Convention, for the UNCCD, and the Minamata Convention on Mercury, respectively. Finally, let me clarify that pursuant to paragraph 34 in the GEF instrument, an amendment to the instrument may be approved by consensus by the Assembly upon the recommendation by the Council, after taking into account the views of the implementing agencies and the trustee, and shall become effective after adoption by the implementing agencies and the trustee in accordance with their respective rules and procedural requirements. We thus consulted with the trustee, UNDP, UNEP, and the World Bank before this meeting on the proposed amendment, and we're happy to report that they are in agreement with what is proposed in the corresponding decision. And with that, I thank you, and we're happy to take questions.
Thank you, Chiz. Thank you. Another historic item is in front of us for a healthy planet, healthy people, BB&J. So the floor is now open for questions and comments. The usual thing applies, flags up. So I recognize Colin.
Thank you. No questions, no clarification. It's just to thank the Secretariat for not only for the presentation but supporting the decision, especially coming from an ocean-locked constituency from the Pacific right up to Timor-Leste, Indonesia, and Philippines. We certainly would like to welcome the decision as well. For the GEF to accept increased GEF mandate and operationalize the fund, as well as increasing, making the necessary amendment to refer to the Assembly in August. With that, I thank you very much for the proactiveness of GEF. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the strong support from a large oceanic state. Laura.
Buenos días a todas y a todos. Primero, agradecer al secretariado por su trabajo para posicionar. Well, I can switch to English if they don't have it. Because...
Sorry about
Gracias, Chizuru. Primero, reconocer al secretariado por el trabajo para posicionar al GEF como un vehículo relevante a nivel internacional, que derive en la ocasión de considerar al GEF como el mecanismo financiero del BB&J. Desde la circunscripción nos gustaría resaltar que tomamos nota del recurso que se solicita para capitalizar este acuerdo son recursos de la partida correspondiente a aguas internacionales. Solicitamos al secretariado más detalles sobre la complementariedad que tendría el GEF con el fondo especial y en específico de la diferencia de actividades que financiaría cada uno. Quisiéramos aún más detalles. Finalmente, desde México vemos con agrado el apoyo para revisar el marco legal e institucional que permita reforzar los esfuerzos ya en marcha sobre ecosistemas marinos. Gracias.
Thank you, Laura. To help the translators out, please speak slowly. Next, we have Wei Feng.
Thank you very much, Chair. And we also thank the Secretariat for updating the progress of the BB&J, and I have 3 general comments. First, we welcome GEF to serve as part of the financial mechanism of BBNG, and the support authorized the use of up to $34 million for the funding of ratification, support, and early implementation of BBNG agreement during GEF 8. The second is we encourage the GEF to actively leverage its resources and comparative advantages to provide more financial support to developing countries' environmental impact assessment and capacity building and the guidance of the conventions. Lastly, as countries have divergent views on management of high seas protected areas, and due to lack of effective experience, the GEF, as a financial mechanism of the conventions, should adhere to political neutrality and avoid carrying projects in disputed territories. This comment, and thank you back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Wei Feng. Corentin.
Thank you, Tom, and many thanks for this comprehensive and particularly detailed report, and thanks for the excellent presentation. We, of course, welcome the recommended decision and the invitation to the GEF to be part of the financial mechanism of the BBNJ. Likewise, we are fully supportive of the recommendation to the GEF Assembly to amend the GEF instrument accordingly. Besides, let me underscore one moment the importance of the adoption of this treaty. It will enable us to much better protect the marine biodiversity in significant parts of the high seas. It's a historical landmark achievement. I'd like to recall that Belgium is part of the Blue Leaders who relentlessly struggled to conclude this treaty and who strived for ambitious language in the text. And we are delighted to see that the GEF is about to receive this new mandate, and we are very confident it will assume it brilliantly. The long-standing experience of the GEF in the biodiversity and international water focal areas are key assets to support the ratification and a diligent implementation of this treaty, which is for Belgium a fundamental new component of the global environment architecture. This treaty is a game changer to reach the objectives we've agreed on in the coming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, including the target to effectively conserve and manage 30% of land and sea areas by 2030. Belgium wishes to emphasize the strong institutional arrangement agreed in this treaty, including a self-standing secretariat. In this sense, dear colleagues, I would like to recall that Belgium presented last week in New York its candidacy to host the secretariat of the BBNG, if this option is the will of the state parties. We believe Belgium has strong assets to assume this important responsibility, and of course we would be very honored to be able to rely on your support. We are looking forward to signing and ratifying the BBNJ agreement as soon as possible, and we invite other state parties to do so to ensure a swift entry into force, and so that the GEF programs addressing biodiversity in the high seas could benefit from the highest legitimacy. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you, Corentin. Emily?
Thank you, Co-Chair, and good morning, colleagues. I also just want to echo the strong support of others and representing a constituency that is surrounded by water. We very much welcome the adoption of the agreement on BBNJ. This is an important step towards ensuring the conservation and sustainable use of marine biological diversity in areas beyond national jurisdiction. The GEF has the institutional and operational experience to serve as the financial mechanism of the BBNJ instrument, and the GEF has successfully supported the management of shared marine resources and on the conservation and sustainable use of marine biodiversity. A financial mechanism managed by the GEF would facilitate the building of synergies and support the development of integrated systemic projects that simultaneously address multiple conventions. Therefore, our constituency very much welcome the GEF becoming a part of the financial mechanism of the BBNJ instrument within the framework of the GEF. Thank you, and over to you.
Thank you, Emily, for the strong support. after Yoko, we'll turn over to the staff, and then we'll continue on. Yoko?
Thank you, Co-Chair. Japan welcomes the agreement on the BBNJ, especially to utilize the GEF as the financial mechanism because it already has the knowledge and experience of managing other environmental agreements. And also, we mentioned this in our G7 summit communique, which was agreed in Hiroshima in last May, that called for its rapid entry into force and implementation, and that the GEF will also contribute to this implementation. We would like to suggest a little bit of an amendment on the decision text, because in the agreed BBNJ agreement, the GEF was mentioned not only 3, 4, 6, 9, but also 10. So we would like to add the paragraph 10 to the articles, and also to quote the article 52, para 9, as it is stated in the paragraph, which I can also send to the Secretariat, but it reads as the GEF shall function under, and we add the authority, comma, where appropriate, comma, before the guidance. So that's that's what it really states in the agreement. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Cheers.
Thank you so much, and we very much appreciate the very supportive words for the GEF to get engaged, as well as the historic agreement on the high seas. And this is the last frontier of conservation as well as sustainable use. We're very excited about this. So just to clarify, so in terms of the activities we supported by the GEF, we will obviously clarify further in terms of what would be considered eligible when we come back with a decision document in the December Council. And incidentally, that's the process we also followed for the Minamata Convention. But generally speaking, the convention text already has identified 5 things that the GEF would support, in addition to what the new special fund would do. And one is capacity building projects under the agreement. The second one is assisting developing states parties in implementing the agreement. And the third one is supporting conservation and sustainable use programs with indigenous peoples and local communities. The fourth one is supported public consultations at the national and sub-regional, regional levels. And then it's the undertaking of any other activities as decided by the Conference of the Parties. So in terms of coming up with the early ratification support, we will clarify what those might be and come back to you for your final decision in December. So. Thank you, Wei Fan, for your comments, and as explained, these are the kinds of activities we will support, and we will, of course, ensure that the resources can be leveraged from additional sources to support capacity building. And you're concerned about the disputed areas noted here. Corentin, thank you so much for your strong support for this ambitious agreement. So given that the entry into force that somebody else also asked about is 60 countries and 120 days afterwards, right? So we do think that to make that speedy early ratification support somewhat akin to what we have provided in the Minamata Convention would be quite helpful, because quite a number of countries did access that for the Minamata Convention, and we'd like to think that that would enable countries to really get ready and... What? Oh, okay. Okay, so we hope that that could be done. And Emily from Denmark, thank you also for your strong support. And just to conclude the question, as well as a request for amendment on the language, we would appreciate you send it to us. And thank you also for reminding us about the G7 communique. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Chiz. So we have our list so that people know: Ramon, CSO Network, Sam, Andreas, Stephanie, and Victor. So Ramon.
Thank you. Firstly, we welcome the GEF approach to BB&J. We have always supported the proactivity of the GEF in regard to BB&J financial mechanism. And in this vein, I would like to ask two questions about your vision for the future work. Firstly, given that international waters are a rather vast and unexplored domain, and given that activity supported may include creation of rosters of technical and legal expertise, knowledge management, development of regional strategies addressing future needs and gaps. My question is, do you foresee a special relationship or engagement with academia, researchers, universities, etc.? I would like to know your views on this. And my second question is, well, the BB&J agreement established a financial mechanism, including a voluntary trust fund, a special trust fund, and the GEF trust fund. So it's pretty clear that we should avoid duplications and promote complementarity and coherence about strategies, policies, eligibility criteria, priorities, so on and so forth. So I'd like to hear your approach to that potential overlaps, and are you seeking guidance by the COP? Do you foresee to include clear indication about that in the future memoranda of understanding between the BB&J COP and the GEF Council? So I'd like to listen to you and know what's your view on these future issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Ramon. CSO Network.
Good morning, and thank you very much. First of all, we support this agenda item. Thank you for this very good historic proposal. We have only one suggestion for this. Under the paragraph number 2A, it talks about the capacity building and for conservation and sustainable use of marine biological diversity and activities. So our proposal is, what is the possibility that, example, if there will be 100 participants, there will be at least 50 women, where certain people from indigenous peoples group, local communities, youth, women, they will participate along with the civil society representatives. Then this format will be an example for future all capacity building related trainings, because we talks about gender. So the policy, the system should support the number of participants, how many women, how many men, and how many civil society representatives, how many indigenous peoples groups representatives, youth and gender, and others. So that will make something good. Thank you very much.
Thank you, CSO Network. Sam?
Thank you, Chair. The UK is delighted that the BB&J agreement has now been adopted at the UN and will be open for signature this September. The BB&J is a landmark treaty that will play a key role to protect 2/3 of the world's oceans and deliver the commitments under the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, such as the 30 by 30 target. It reinforces the role of UNCLOS as the cornerstone of international ocean governance and demonstrates that UN multilateral diplomacy can still succeed in reaching an ambitious agreement on issues of shared interests. The UK welcomes the GEF becoming part of the financial mechanism, and we agree with the recommendation decision of this paper for the GEF to play a helpful early phase role, particularly support for developing country ratification to expedite this urgently needed agreement entering into force, support for early activities and initial guidelines for enabling activities. We note BB&J agreement aims to ensure that duplication is avoided and complementarity and coherence is promoted across the BB&J financial mechanism. We encourage the GEF proactively to support this ambition and provide to the Council in future an update on approaches to be taken to achieve this, alongside regular reporting for the GEF undertakes on its own supports to its conventions. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Andreas?
Good morning, and thank you very much to the Secretariat for the paper. Excuse me. We would like to echo the words, the positive words of the others around the table, and especially from our Pacific colleague this morning. Thank you very much. We view the new treaty as an important step forward in our collective efforts to safeguard our oceans for the future. So we welcome the GEF Secretariat to serve as the mechanism of the BBNJ Convention. We welcome the authorisation of funds from the GEF 8 to provide support for ratification and early action activities related to this important treaty. We also support the development of guidelines for enabling activities and ratification, and we emphasise the need for the ability of SIDS, Small Island Developing States, to access funding to implement this important convention. Thank you.
Thank you, Andreas. Stephanie, s'il vous plaît.
Bonjour à tous, merci Monsieur le Président. Je vous laisse quelques instants pour mettre vos casques. Nous soutenons pleinement l'approbation de cette décision, l'adoption du traité dit BBNJ ou sur la haute mer en mars dernier est une avancée majeure en vue de la protection de la biodiversité en haute mer et de son utilisation durable. Donc nous souhaitons, la France souhaite profiter de cette opportunité pour rappeler clairement le soutien entier de la France au GEF en tant qu'acteur central et crucial du financement de l'environnement mondial. Le GEF agit à l'intersection de nombreux enjeux. Loin de fragmenter son action, l'intégration d'une nouvelle convention que le GEF servira représente un renforcement de son action et de sa cohérence. De même, loin d'être un signe de désintérêt, la présence du GEF parmi le mécanisme financier de BBNJ est une assurance de qualité pour ce traité. Nous nous félicitons que le traité BBNJ puisse être soutenu par l'action du GEF, acteur expérimenté et incontournable pour l'environnement mondial. Nous appelons donc le secrétariat à tout mettre en œuvre pour proposer dès que possible les activités prévues pour la ratification et nous encourageons tous les pays à ratifier au plus vite le traité et à faire usage du soutien proposé par le GEF dès qu'il sera disponible. Merci.
Merci, Stephanie. Victor?
Thank you, Tom. We thank the comprehensive documents presented by Secretariat. Thank you, Chiz. And we welcome the adoption of the BBNJ Treaty, most important ocean negotiations in recent decade, which contains provisions on marine genetic resources, area-based management measures, including marine protected areas, environmental impact studies, and capacity building and transfer of marine technology. As a home to long shores on both the Atlantic and the Pacific, our constituency believes that the support for the ratification and early entry into activities in developing countries will be critical for the prompt entry into force of the treaty. In this very sense, I refer to the project decision where in line 13 it says, quote, requests the GEF Secretariat to develop initial guidelines for enabling activities and ratification support projects in consultation with the interim Secretariat of the BBNJ agreement, unquote. Our constituency would like to suggest the deletion of in consultation with the interim Secretariat of the BBNJ agreement for a matter of consistency, considering that the interim Secretariat will only be established once the treaty enters into force and through the first COP according to Article 50, Paragraph 1 of the draft agreement. We're looking forward to the more detailed guidelines and thank again the Secretariat, looking forward to the guidelines to be presented at the 65th Council meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Victor. Before I turn it over to Chiz, this is the list of the next speakers: Jean, Rob, Sylvia, Masood, and Laverne. If there are others, please raise your flag so that we can add it to the list. Cheers.
Thank you so much, and thank you for, once again, the broad support as well as encouraging words. On a question from Ramon, the vision for the future, we do think this particular agreement in itself is very ambitious. It covers the last frontier of the Earth nature as well as what needs to be protected for global commons. And we are very encouraged that the GEF can serve as part of the financial mechanism for this particular convention. And the vision for the future also includes that the alignment and close connection of the support we can provide under this agreement, along with the biodiversity focal area support, as well as the tremendous amount of work we have been doing under international waters, which we have summarized in this document. We didn't really have the time to present it this morning for the constraints that we have on the time. In terms of the specific question on the creation of rosters, expertise, and what exactly are we looking for, I'm going to ask my colleague Jurgis to explain that. For the moment, in terms of the question of how we avoid overlap, when the discussion as well as the adoption of the document show that there will be two entities, that will be the GEF and the special fund, more or less sharing the same elements of support as also included in the text. It became clear that establishing complementarity and coherence would be actually a very important subject to move forward. We do have, obviously, experience doing that under different conventions, for instance, between the GEF and GCF, as well as LDCF and SCCF and Adaptation Fund, and also under the Chemicals Convention, because for Minamata, we're not the only the financial mechanism. So we will be informed by the experiences as well as mechanisms that we have put into place to enable collaboration as well as complementarity between the different elements. Also keeping in mind that at this juncture, the special fund doesn't exist, so it also needs to be developed, established, and it's going to take some time for us to understand how it's going to be established and how we would coordinate as well as work together to avoid any overlap. So for the time being in the GEF 8, because we do have the resources from the replenishment, our effort will be concentrated on early ratification support as well as early implementation in line with the strategy. So, do you want to talk about that? Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. On the rosters of experts and what we're proposing at this stage, and we'll come back with a more specific proposal in December, is to have two types of support. One share would be directly national support to countries to really help them know where they are in terms of use and impact on areas beyond national jurisdiction and be able to have the legal system in place to ratify. But given the nature of ABNJ, we are proposing also to have some regional and or global support. We'll see what is the more relevant. And at that scale, to tap and create a pool of expertise that will be wide-ranging, and academia will be included as relevant, and it will be part of the work that we'll do up until December, after that, to implement those ratification support projects. But to have a pool of expertise and have savings in terms of scale by providing experts at the regional or global level that countries can tap into to more efficiently start their ratification and early implementation of the agreement. But the idea is to be wide-ranging at this stage, and we'll consult widely on what are the country's needs in terms of expertise and what would make the most sense in terms of scale to make that expertise available. And we wanted to come back on the suggested amendment to the decision related to the sentence clarifying the relationship between the GEF and the COP. Japan suggested to reintroduce the language that is indeed in the BBNJ agreement, in the Article 52, where it states that the mechanism shall function under the authority, as appropriate, and guidance of, which is a similar language that you will find in the Stockholm Convention, and there is also a similar language in the CBD convention as well. But as you will see in the instrument, for those two conventions in paragraph 6, where those conventions is listed, this language does not appear because legally the GEF is under the authority of its governing bodies and not of the COPs. So that's why the language is slightly different in the instrument compared to what is in the convention text. And the as appropriate is interpreted as making this distinction between different parts of the financial mechanism for BBNJ, because the financial mechanism has 3 elements, including this voluntary trust fund that will be directly under the authority of the COP, whereas the GEF has its own governing body already, which provides the authority for the GEF, and the COP is to provide guidance, but not to be the authority of the GEF. That's why the language is slightly different in the proposed amendment to the instrument, and what is proposed is directly in line with the precedents for the Stockholm Convention and the CDB as well. Thank you.
Just a second. Thank you, Jurgis. Just to add a couple of elements about how we would go about supporting the timely entry into force of this particular convention. Similar to what we have done for the Minamata Convention, the support for early ratification can be provided to countries that actually have already signed the BBNJ agreement, but also to countries that haven't signed, but they are taking meaningful steps towards becoming a party. So that was an element that was allowed by the Council as well as for the Minamata Convention. So we're also introducing that so that there will be more wider access to the resources for early ratification support to countries. And we believe that is one of the steps that we can actually introduce to enable countries to get the necessary preparations done towards the signing of the agreement. Thanks.
Jean, s'il vous plaît.
Bonjour, chers tous. Bonjour, Monsieur le Président. Oui, la question est d'actualité et en tant que représentante des pays côtiers de l'Afrique de l'Ouest, vous comprenez que nos pays sont confrontés à beaucoup de problèmes liés à l'océan Atlantique, bien sûr. Nous supportons vivement l'avènement de cette nouvelle convention et souhaitons, à travers les activités habilitantes qui vont en découler, de bénéficier du renforcement des capacités de nos pays dans ce domaine. Ça, c'est un plaidoyer pour qu'on puisse accompagner les pays côtiers qui sont confrontés, les problèmes évoqués ici, les problèmes sur la biodiversité, les problèmes sur la gestion des plastiques, les déchets, l'écoulement des déchets vers l'océan Atlantique. Ce sont des problématiques auxquelles nous faisons face aujourd'hui et pour pouvoir bénéficier de l'attention du GEF, nous pensons que nous avons besoin d'être coachés, d'avoir des renforcements de capacités à divers niveaux pour pouvoir y arriver. Je vous remercie.
Merci beaucoup. Rob?
Thank you, Tom, and thank you, Chiz and Jurgis, for the presentation and the explanations. I think they're super helpful. We welcome the GEF as the operating entity of the BBNJ's agreement's financial mechanism. We support the proposed council decision that includes a recommendation to the GEF Assembly to amend the GEF instrument to include the BB&J agreement in paragraph 6 as one of the MEAs the GEF serves. We support the GEF's proposals for the use of the $34 million to support national ratification and early action to implement the BB&J agreement. We look forward to seeing the guidelines for those activities at our next council meeting. We encourage the GEF to continue to engage, and actually, I think it's with the UN Division of Ocean Affairs and Law of the Sea. I have it in my notes as an acronym, but I think that's what the acronym stands for. And key stakeholders during the interim period until the first COP to develop the initial guidelines for enabling activities and ratification support, and to seek complementarity with the special fund once established. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rob. Sylvia?
Thank you, Tom. Germany approves the recommended Council decision and therefore supports GEF playing a significant role in financing the effective implementation of the forthcoming agreement. The swift implementation of the BB&J agreement is a high priority for Germany, and we look forward to entering into this phase, especially with regards to the focus on biodiversity protection in international waters. We welcome the way forward outlined by the GEF regarding its contribution to the financing of the BB&J agreement. Germany further welcomes the outlined, supports the suggested amendment of the GEF instrument to include the BB&J agreement into the list of MEAs served by the GEF, as well as the development of a memorandum of understanding to further clarify its relationship with the Conference of the Parties to the BB&J agreement. We are convinced that the GEF, as part of the financial mechanism, will help to implement the necessary measures to conserve and sustainably manage marine biodiversity beyond national jurisdiction by providing financial support for capacity building, research, technology transfer, and the development of innovative solutions. GEF funding enables the exchange of knowledge and best practices and fosters cooperation amongst nations. We particularly welcome the participation of IPLCs in these activities as holders of traditional knowledge. As pointed out in the document, we need to differentiate finance streams by the GEF and finance streams by the Special Fund, and will need to discuss this further for GEF 9. Germany particularly welcomes GEF support through capacity building for the ratification and implementation of the BB&J agreement, which is of great importance in order to get all states on board in a timely manner. We would, however, like to better understand the division of labor with a special fund designed under the BB&J agreement, and hope that the Secretariat will help us to understand this matter a bit better. Thank you.
Thanks, Sylvia. Masood?
Thank you very much. I just have wish to seek some clarification, since we are talking about United Nations Convention on Law of the Sea, and still a number of countries have signed this convention but have not ratified. So we wish to know if those who have not officially ratified and approved based on their national and domestic procedure, can they also join any projects under this title or not? And if that could be a regional program, again, I mean for a specific water basin, how it could be. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Laverne?
Thank you, Chair. The Caribbean constituency through the Caribbean community, CARICOM, gave its support to the GEF to be the financing mechanism for the BB&J. This endorsement illustrates our confidence in the GEF's track record of supporting environmental benefits in international waters. We expect the GEF to ensure the recruitment of appropriate personnel to aid in the operationalization of the BB&J mechanism. As large ocean states, with most of our jurisdiction being our marine environment, this mechanism will enable us to further expand projects and programs that preserve and promote the sustainable use of our marine environment, particularly in the areas beyond national jurisdiction. We look forward to receiving the guidelines that will support the rollout of enabling activities and ratification support projects. Thank you.
Thanks, Laverne. Karen?
Thank you. I just want to echo what others have been saying and welcome the GEF being part of the financial mechanism of the BBNJ agreement. We support the council decision, and I also want to thank SHIS and the Secretariat for their explanation in relation to the risk of duplication and efforts to avoid, promote complementarity. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. Rosanna?
Thank you very much. I also would like to express support to the GEF for its decision to serve as part of the financial mechanism, as this treaty is a crucial instrument for addressing global efforts to counter the destructive trends facing ocean health. With the financial support of the GEF, it will be possible to support the ratification and early implementation of the High Seas Treaty and creation of the appropriate legal framework for marine conservation access to and use of marine genetic resources. In the result, we will be able to address the triple planetary crises of climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution. It is also important in light of the targets of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the Global Biodiversity Framework, particularly through facilitation the achievement of the target to effectively conserve and manage 30% of the land and sea by 2030. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Rosanna. I recognize the FAO.
Thank you, Tom. The Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations welcomes the GEF becoming part of the financial mechanism for this landmark BB&J agreement, covering nearly 2/3 of the world's oceans. This BB&J agreement and GEF's support of it is of great importance to our efforts to tackle environmental challenges and promote the conservation and sustainable use of marine biological diversity on the high seas. FAO looks forward to working with the GEF partnership to provide crucial support to countries in gearing up to ratify and implement this important agreement. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Chis, over to you.
Thank you very much. And I think overall we're very appreciative of the supportive comments received from all council members. And we do take note also of the feedback on the need for capacity building for the countries, particularly those that have coastal areas as well as in need of capacity support. Rob from the U.S. mentioned the engagement of stakeholders as well as Dualos. We have been actually engaged quite a bit in consultation, and I think Dualos colleagues are participating, observing this session virtually, and we will continue to work with them as well as our stakeholders moving forward. Sylvia from Germany raised important issues about the engagement of IPLCs as well as the having clarity as well as swift implementation being a priority. Since we can actually build on experiences providing early implementation or early ratification support from the Minamata Convention, we have more or less a clarity on the process internally about how we go about developing the necessary typologies as well as clarifying what support countries could need and putting into place the mechanism to be able to provide resources swiftly. So we will continue to move forward with that and coming back to council in December on that one. And I think I already provided feedback on the divisional responsibility as well as complementarity, and also noting that it's up to the parties at the end of the day to really clarify how the different parts of the financial mechanism would work together. And that's something that has been done under the Climate Convention also. On the comment from Iran, our understanding is this particular convention will be open for signature from September. So we're not quite at the point of having any numbers of the countries that are formally expressed their interest to move ahead on the signature yet. And we can also discuss a little bit further about the regional support. And thank you, Laverne, also highlighting the importance of this particular convention for CIS and large ocean countries. And also take note with appreciation for the comments provided by Karen. And also on the capacity needs reached by Armenia, we also take note of those.
So to further clarify the approach with both having national and regional activities, we are building on our past support on management of the areas beyond national jurisdiction in our GEF 5 program dedicated to that. We notably supported 25 countries in the ratification of the Port States Measures Agreement, and this used a combination of national support, including workshops, but also regional workshops with countries facing similar challenges, where they could benefit from regional legal templates to help them with the ratification support, but also build a capacity on specific technologies that were needed to implement the Port States Measure Agreement even before its entry into force, to be sure they would be ready. So it's those type of activities where we would be able to gather the expertise and specific tools that can be provided to multiple countries at the same time, bearing in mind that ratification is a national process in the end, that national support will be needed for that. But we see scope, especially given we're talking about management of the areas beyond national jurisdiction, to have some at least regional and probably global activities, because a good share of the implementation of the BBNG agreement is to rely on existing regional or sectoral bodies, and those bodies will need to be made aware of this new agreement and what it entails for them to support the implementation. So those types of bodies will also have to be targeted for the proper implementation of the agreement as soon as it enters into force. And so we also have this in mind, and this includes the regional fisheries management organizations or organizations like the IMO that will need, where delegates to those bodies will need to be fully aware of this new agreement and what it implies for the sectors or their region. Thank you.
So I recognize IPAG, and unless, nope, I think Laverne, are you going to come back also? So IPAG, please, as the last speaker.
Thank you very much. IPAG support Council decision for GEF as part of the financial mechanism to cover 2/3 of the world's oceans. This is a crucial instrument to counter destructive trends affecting fishing sea-based communities. Indigenous peoples communities, including the Philippines, are already conducting subnational consultations on ancestral waters aimed at strengthening common values with state-led marine protected areas, as well as to assert decisions made under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. We see the role of GEF as an additional layer of protection for indigenous peoples who live within marine areas or where they claim to live 80% of their lives are spent at sea. This is a high priority for indigenous peoples, given that intrusions in their territories do not occur only in their lands, but these are felt in ancestral waters where infrastructure and development projects proceed without our free, prior, and informed consent. In marine contexts, this is manifested with commercial vessels and small fishing boats intruding into our traditional waters, with most intruders damaging marine resources, utilizing fishing methods that are not in accordance with customary law. In response, several incidents have been reported where indigenous peoples have had to enforce their customary law despite the absence of effective support and capacity. We see the GEF financial mechanism as an additional layer of support for capacity. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any last comments just before? So, colleagues, what we heard is that there is strong support for this item and that there are some proposed refinements to the decision text. We will update the decision text and then circulate it for adoption later today. And so I would like to suspend this item for now until we adopt the revised decision text later. So without further ado, we'll go to the next agenda item, which is other business. And as we did on Monday, there were a few speakers who requested to speak under other business, the first being Rajinder from India. I recognize Rajinder.
Thank you, Chair. With reference to we have faced scenarios wherein projects are being proposed by GEF agencies in the areas and territories which are disputed, and wherein there are UN resolutions and there are international issues, and we tried to negotiate with the GEF, but finally we came to know that GEF doesn't follow any disputed area policy, wherein there are standing agreements in all such organizations, international bodies. For example, World Bank follows a policy of not having areas in disputed projects in disputed area policy. Therefore, on behalf of our constituency, we request the chair to include a proposal for adoption of a policy of engagement in disputed areas for GEF on the lines of similar policy for MDBs. For example, World Bank's operational manual OP 7.60. So this is the proposal. Members may deliberate because these are agreed principles for negotiation and engagement. Thank you, and back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Rajinder. I invite the Secretary to talk about the most important thing in our lives, dates and venues.
Thank you very much, Mr. Co-Chair. So first, to recall that yesterday, at the beginning of the meeting, we agreed that agendas items 7, 8, and 14 will be deferred to a special session of the Council. The dates of the special session of the Council will require a decision, but we will do that by mail once we've found dates that seem to fit in and don't collide with other meetings where you might be involved. So that will be now our 65th meeting of the Council. The 66th meeting of the Council, which is the one in December, has already been decided by mail. So that is virtual format and the week of December 18. It's close to the end of year's festivity, we all know that, but the previous COP finishes on the 12th, so there's just no time to do it earlier than the week of the 18th. Anyway, we explained all that in the decision, and you've adopted it, but I just wanted to recall that that was the logic. All right, then we have to decide the dates for our 67th meeting next year, and that would be June, and the dates proposed are the week of June the 3rd. The reason is because that's the only week we can get the Preston Auditorium at the World Bank, which is our usual venue. So unless there are any objections, then that will be the date. Yes, Karen. Oh, I see there's one objection. Okay, right. Karen.
Yes, I was just thinking when it comes to the council meeting in December, I think that the meeting being really squeezed in between the COP28 and Christmas, and also knowing what we are adding to our agenda from the original council meeting, would it be possible to consider moving the council meeting to the end of January to make more room? I mean, it's really different to have a virtual meeting, also because the days are only like 4 or 5 hours. So compared to an in-person meeting, we have less time and it's really squeezed in and we have a lot of things on the agenda. That's a suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia.
I can actually put down my flag because she just want to echo Karen.
Well, we did send out a decision by mail and there was no objection. So I would, if we could avoid changing our own decisions, it would be helpful. But the other thing is that if we move a decision to January, then we got to move June until September, because there's no time to prepare the documents for June. And if you move September, then you've got to move December, and so on, and we'll eventually get back to the same schedule that we have now. So if we can, you can always, when we send the agenda out, you can say, these agenda items we don't need now, we can push them to the next meeting. Let's go ahead.
Sorry, could you explain, if we move the meeting to January, why do we have to change the June meeting?
Because we have to prepare a work program, right? And that moves all the deadlines for the work program so close.
But couldn't the work program could still be ready in December, and so that preparations, couldn't that just?
No, I'm talking about the work program after that.
I understand.
You see? All right. Yes, that's all right. The instrument says that we have to have 2 meetings a year at least. Since we're having a special meeting, then this year would be 3. So we'll use that as the second meeting of the year, the special council meeting. We will move the December meeting to the end of January, but then we will have to we will do a decision by mail on the 66th meeting because we've got to find another venue. So we're going to have to find a hotel that's free in Washington and, do all the arrangements as we did last time. So I can't tell you what date that is because I don't know what's available in Washington when we get back. We will, around the date that we want to do, which is probably end of June, and we'll send you all that information by mail. So we don't take any decision right now, except that the 65th or 6th meeting will be held at the end of January, as you request. Yes, Emily.
No, thanks. I mean, maybe this is just a suggestion, but some of the gap analysis reports that have been tabled until the December council meeting, could we, for example, include those in this special council intersessional meeting, just so that we don't have such a packed agenda for December?
Okay.
Thanks.
So since we are considering doing the 66 at the very end of January, there is no need to do this because we will rush in with that agenda item in September, October, and we may not be prepared as Secretariat to do that. But if we agree on doing the 66 by the end of January, and then we do the 67 in Washington, D.C., not at the beginning of June, rather than at the end of the June, and we find a place in Washington, there will be no problem on our side.
Thank you. Yoko?
No, we just want to echo the Sweden and the Germany in supporting the January Council meeting.
Okay, thank you very much. Any more comments? Okay, just to recap. So, we will have, our next meeting will be the 61st, 5th. It will be a special council meeting, and the dates will be communicated by email. The 66th, we will do at the end of January, virtual. And the 67th, we will do at the end of June, hopefully, but we got to look for a venue, so the specific dates will also be decided by email. Does that cover everything?
Yep.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, of course, we have to give the floor to...
First, Ben. Ben has come back.
Ben has come back, okay.
Ben?
Thank you very much. Thanks for taking this AOB. The point that I raised before was that within the documents for this meeting, there was 2 papers as information documents on gap analysis. Those were presented as for information. However, within the GEF8 replenishment discussion, at least in one part of the document, it was said that participants request the Secretary to undertake a gap analysis of relevant GEF policies and guidelines for consideration at the 64th Council meeting. So I think that providing those documents as information hasn't really allowed us to consider those. I too agree that we've been spending some time on some other issues in this council meeting, but I think, and understandably, we're pushing those back as we've done a lot of other documents. So it's just be really helpful to just get clarity in terms of how those will be properly considered by the council going forward. But also just to reiterate that there was another couple of other documents which were have been pushed out of this meeting already on streamlining, but also on risk appetite. So it would be really helpful to understand that those will also be taken forward, and in some cases it would be really helpful to look at how we can expedite some of those discussions. So for example, on the risk appetite, there's no real reason why we have to wait for the council meeting and try to take forward some of the discussions, for example, between the GEF Secretariat and the STAP. On that would be helpful to kick those processes off so that we can continue those processes before we actually have those discussions in the council meetings. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ben. I think Sonia has all of the answers for us.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Ben. Indeed, it was as you mentioned, there is a discrepancy in the policy recommendations in terms of whether these 2 gap analyses are to be information or discussion documents. So that's our error. We brought them as information documents because one part of the paper said information and another part said discussion. So fully recognizing that you and others want the 2 gap analyses for discussion, we will bring them as discussion documents to the December or January Council. The reason I would propose to leave it to then instead of bringing it to the intersessional that we may have is because obviously preparing a paper as an information document versus as a discussion document is a slightly different affair. So I think it would be good for us to take the time to revisit the 2 papers and bring them appropriately for discussion at the January Council. So if that's okay with you and the others who have raised it, then that's what we'll do. And on the risk and streamlining, of course, the replenishment package, policy recommendations package promised 2 papers for discussion to this council, which we deferred to December, which will now be January. One on the risk appetite, establishing the risk appetite, and the other one on the streamlining of the GEF processes. And we deliberately took that decision, which we discussed with many of you in the pre-council meetings, bilaterals. We deliberately took the decision to postpone those papers to the December-January Council because of the GBFF and the fact that we were already starting to address those issues in a smaller way within the GBFF discussion. So we wanted to adopt a more sequential approach where what we were discussing and working out on the GBFF would then feed in as a direct input into that discussion on the wider GEF Trust Fund. So that's the reason that those two papers haven't been brought here and will be brought to the January Council. Let me just call it the January Council. And on the risk, yes, the next step will be the establishment of a working group with council members and with staff. We've discussed this with staff as well, and we will come back to you as soon as we can after this council and maybe after a bit of a summer break, and we will start that process in full steam with the intention of bringing it for discussion in the January Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonia. I hope that those answers were very comprehensive, and since Ben nodded knowingly, so it's all good. Anyways, on a lighter note, I would like to, because we approved visibility and recognition earlier this week, now there's going to be a very interesting video thanks to Nicola Marquez. So Nicola, go for it. So I hope that is a testimony to the work of our wonderful Robert Bissett in collaboration with our publicists in the Government of Canada. And I will tell you that about a year or so ago, Carlos Manuel asked us to help put GEF on the map. And not only did Canada do it, but I think all of us here have worked together very well in order to deliver historic decisions on GEF 8, on everything that, to bring GEF to the point that it is today. And we will have the opportunity again to, let us say, work hard over the next few hours to deliver more history for a healthy planet, healthy people. I just wanted to share that one. I didn't want to do anything more than that. And of course, the GEF Secretariat with the Government of Canada are here to facilitate everyone to the best of our ability to come to Vancouver at the end of August. And all of those imagery is actually real. So I lived there for like decades. And I love Vancouver. And for those who have been there, I know you love it too. For those who have not, you're in for an excellent, let us say, experience. Food, water, mountains, clean air, and food again. It's actually quite good. So I think based on, I'm going to pass over to the Secretary to tell us some housekeeping issues before. Oh, Masood.
Thank you very much. We all wish that the next GEF Assembly in Vancouver to be a great success for all of us, and we wish to extend our support to you and also to the GEF Secretariat. But at the same time, we hope that there could be adequate and timely facilities considered by the government of Canada to issue the visa for all delegations and for everybody to be able to be on board and to participate actively in the future discussions. I want to highlight that during the previous COP, Biodiversity COP, only one person from our delegation could receive, timely visa and to attend that conference, and the rest could not join. So this could be a source of concern. Of course, we do understand that each country has its own rules and regulations when it comes to visa, and having in mind the sensitivities, they will have their own process. But what we expect from you and also from the Secretariat is to consider a kind of support and facilities, in particular for those countries who do not have embassies in Ottawa, or maybe Canada do not have embassies in other capitals. So these facilities to be considered, so everybody to be happy at the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Masood. I used to work in the immigration department, so I understand very well your point of view. Secretary, you want to say something? Miguel.
Sí, buenos días, Secretaría. Igual nos plegamos a la solicitud de los compañeros de Irán y en función a que se consideren algunos países donde no está la representación diplomática y puedan agilizarse los trámites para que puedan participar las delegaciones. Y bueno, muchas gracias.
Thank you for that, Miguel.
Okay, the only thing sorry, Erin. No, yes, sir.
Thank you, Co-Chair, and thank you for the concerns shared by delegates. I just wanted to assure all delegates that we are working very closely with the GEF Secretariat, with our immigration services to ensure a smooth visa process for all delegates. We do have a risk mitigation strategy based on lessons learned, including from COP15, to ensure that any issues with visas are addressed in a timely manner. We are in direct communication with our immigration department to ensure all delegates receive their visas in time. As the video showed, we are very much looking forward to welcoming everybody to Vancouver August 22nd and to ensure a effective and inclusive event in Vancouver. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Erin. The only thing I wanted to bring to your attention is the fact that we have for this council an information document number 14 that gives you a pretty complete and clear outline of what's going to happen when we go to Vancouver. The only thing that is missing from there are the names of the speakers and things like that, because we're in the process of confirming them, okay? But the structure, the side events, the main events, the receptions, everything's there, okay? So if you have any questions, of course, please feel free to ask. But we thought that gives everybody who needs to inform their authorities of what's going to happen a good view of what to expect. Thank you.
Thank you for that, William. And I think William has just appealed to all of us to help translate those names, TBD, into actual names. And so, this is our assembly, not just here, but our assembly. So if there are those who have influencers and so on and so forth, who could actually populate the high-level roundtables and so on and so forth, I think Claude, Chiz, and everyone working on this assembly to make it a real innovative experience for everyone would really much appreciate it. So with that, I close other business. And many of the decisions will be done by mail, especially the most important one, dates and venues. And with that, with the concurrence of the CEO, the chair, I suspend the GEF Council. And we will reopen with other business of GEF Council later on, TBD. With Council's indulgement, we will try to finish the LDCF, begin right away to do the must-dos of the LDCF and SCCF, including the work program, so that least developed countries and SIDS actually benefit. And also there's the matter of budgets, and we cannot delay budgets, as we all know, because people need to be paid and things need to be financed. So with your indulgence, we will begin LDCF, SCCF. Can we give 10 minutes?
Just sorry, maybe I wasn't paying enough attention. Could you please clarify what we are doing right now?
Okay, so GEF Council is effectively suspended until later. Now we begin LDCF, SCCF Council. Go ahead.
So I don't think we've finished GEF Council. We have still pending issues, and it is probably needed to discuss them in plenary session.
Yes, we are just suspending GEF Council. We will resume afterwards in a GEF Council session, unless you would like to actually basically go forward with the discussion on the Global Biodiversity Framework Fund now, because that's the key item. The recommendation from the chairs is that we suspend GEF Council and then reopen the GEF Council after we finish the LDCF, SCCF Council on the must-dos that we have to do on that one. Any comments with respect to that?
At least on our side, we would prefer to discuss on plenary, on GBF fund.
On the
GBF fund.
So the proposal from Stephanie is that we continue the GEF Council and discuss the Global Biodiversity Framework Fund. Any views on that? Yes, Victor.
Thank you, Tom. Well, we support the Secretary's idea of suspending, not finishing, but suspending GEF Council. And we totally agree that we need to further discuss GBF fund, but I think not now, not here in the council. So we support the Secretariat's initial proposal going to special climate council.
Thanks, Victor. Any other views? Rajinder?
Thank you, Chair, and my apologies for taking floor twice on the same issue, but I didn't hear any response from the Secretariat whether there is will be some discussion in the present council meeting, or it would be deferred to next council meeting. You will circulate the agenda into this. So we would like to hear your views from the Secretariat on the matter.
Rajinder, on the issue that you raised, it will be put on the agenda of the next available council.
Thank you so much for the clarity.
Thank you. Wei Fang?
Thank you very much, Chair. And just one clarification related to request from Rajinder. We understand that GEF is a trust fund administered by the World Bank, and it may need to follow some fiduciary requirement of the bank. So does it need to follow the same policies of the bank in related to the how to use the resources related to the issue of the territory in disputed, and hope this will also be clarified when the Secretariat to prepare the discussion of this issue. And thank you.
Thank you for that, Wei Feng. When the issue that Rajinder has put on the table, when it's put on the agenda, that is when we will have a discussion on all of those questions. So thank you for that. Masood?
Thank you. Just a query. By suspending the council meeting and going to LDC fund meeting, does it mean that simultaneously we can go to the small room and continue our discussions on GBF or not? Thank you.
Masood, thank you so much for volunteering to really deliver history today. For the purposes of supporting the work of LDCs and SIDS and so on, that's why we need to move to the LDCF, SCCF Council and expeditiously take those decisions. In parallel, just like last days, you could do what you need to do in order to advise us on in terms of how we want to deliver the decisions that we need to deliver in terms of the Global Biodiversity Framework Fund as instructed to us by the COP15 decisions. Emily?
Thank you. And this is just to support friends on the proposal not to suspend GEF Council for the moment and to continue the discussions on the GBFF. Thank you.
We follow on the same line, and maybe as an option for a bit of a compromise and not to hurt the LDCF work program too much, we could support having a very swift and quick decision on the work program and then go directly back to GEF Council in order to discuss the GBFF. Okay.
That is exactly the idea, and thank you so much, Sylvia, for putting it on the table. As some of you have said that I'm a dictator when it comes to the agenda, and with your permission, as proposed, let's suspend the GEF Council and go quickly into LDCF, SCCF, and go expeditiously through the must-dos of the LDCF, SCCF, so that we can provide the support we need to the beneficiaries of both of these climate adaptation funds. Is that agreeable? I do not see any fundamental objections to that. Let's proceed as Sylvia suggested. It's adopted. Thank you. Let's. So colleagues, by popular demand, I am the chair. We begin with agenda item number 2, adoption of the agenda. The provisional agenda for consideration by Council has been circulated to all members as document GEF LDCF SCCF 3401. And as per usual, with the adoption of the agenda, are there any other items that Council members would like to add under other business? Seeing none? Given that we have a lot of business and given the time constraint and also the instruction of Council, due to time constraint, agenda item 4, FY22 Annual Monitoring Review of the Least Developed Countries Fund and the Special Climate Change Fund will not be presented to this Council. Instead, it will be presented to the 35th LDCF SCCF Council meeting in January next year. It is open for any comments, but I think there's a vigorous support to move on. So I would like to invite Council to adopt the agenda for this meeting as presented, given the consideration above. It's adopted. Thank you so much. So we proceed with agenda item number 3, work program for the Least Developed Countries Fund and the Special Climate Change Fund. Ms. Chizuru Aoki will present GEF LDCF SCCF 3403.
Thank you very much, and good morning, colleagues, once again. I have the pleasure to very quickly present the work program of the LDCF and SCCF. Do I have this right? Okay. So the document in front of you, the work program for the LDCF and SCCF, is requesting the LDCF financing of about $60 million, $60.13 million to be exact, and the SCCF resources of $3.36 million for a total of 6 projects. And I will mention that these are all the projects that were submitted and all the projects that were technically cleared for inclusion. These projects are covering priority sectors for the countries, including nature-based solutions and ecosystem-based approaches, climate-resilient agriculture and food security, water security, as well as climate-resilient land management. So to provide further clarification on the projects that we have, out of the $63.4 million of GEF financing, that is mobilizing $210.7 million with co-financing, and that would come to the total investment of $275 million for adaptation priorities in the LDCs as well as CIS. There are 2 LDCF national projects, 3 MTF, which means multi-trust fund projects, and 2 SCCF projects, and I will quickly go through them. The 2 LDCF proposals are the country projects, one in Bhutan, and I will mention that Bhutan will be graduating from the LDC status in December of this year. So it was very important for us to include the Bhutan project in this particular work program so they can actually maximize their support from the LDCF prior to the impending graduation. Another project is in Comoros with UNEP, and you can see the financial breakdowns as well as what these projects are addressing in terms of adaptation priorities. There are 3 multi-trust fund project proposals. One is a global initiative that is looking at the need to have a global support for the challenge program for adaptation innovation, and having the platform to enable that to prosper and share lessons learned as well as knowledge together. We have 2 additional projects. One is a Zambia project, as you can see. Another one is a project in Djibouti. And I will mention that the multi-trust fund projects with the GEF Trust Fund, which is the Zambia and Djibouti projects, those have already been approved on the GEF Trust Fund side on Monday. We are very, very excited that we have the first national CIS projects under the SCCF, and you might recall that the focus on small island developing states under the window of SCCF for adaptation is something that we are very much excited to provide. And we have the first national projects from Cabo Verde that will be tapping into the $3 million resources that we have agreed to provide to all CIS under GEF 8 under the SCCF window 8. So this clarifies the strategic focus areas of this particular work program, including scaling up finance, technology, innovation, private sector engagement, inclusion and whole of society approach, as well as the adaptation needs of CIS. For the consideration of time, I'm not going to go into details of this. Expected results are presented here. They will all deliver adaptation benefits, and we are tracking the core indicators from the GEF 8 results architecture, and those are presented here and explained in further detail in the documentation in front of you. And I will also mention that we have been tracking the gender elements of our interventions and projects, and those are clarified further, as well as alignment with our gender efforts within the GEF. So with that, I thank you, and we'd be happy to answer any questions you might have briefly.
So the floor is open. Yes, Sam.
Thank you, Chair. Just briefly, we'd just like to say that we welcome the work programme and the pledges made at COP27 to the LDCF and SCCF to enable this. Since COP27, the UK has made a contribution of 2.5 million to the Special Climate Change Fund. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. I think is it Stephanie?
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Je vais m'exprimer en français. Je vais essayer de faire court, mais je voudrais remercier les pays, les agences, les implementing agencies, les executing agencies et le secrétariat pour la préparation de ce work programme. Bien sûr, nous l'approuvons. Je voudrais souligner néanmoins la prédominance de quelques agences seulement, et du PNUD en particulier, alors que la diversité des agences accréditées par le GEF permettrait de proposer de très beaux projets avec des valeurs ajoutées certaines liées à l'expertise de ces agences. Par exemple, sur les solutions fondées sur la nature pour l'adaptation au changement climatique ou contre l'érosion côtière ou sur la restauration d'écosystèmes. Nous pouvons penser notamment à certaines des ONG, mais aussi aux partenaires des IFIs. Je vous donne simplement un exemple qui peut aussi servir d'autres discussions que nous avons et que nous avons suspendues. Nous soutenons un projet ou un programme que certains d'entre vous connaissent sûrement, the Western African Coastal Area Program with the World Bank, with the French Facility for Global Environment for nature-based solution. Under this pilot project, under the full program, les solutions fondées sur la nature sont testées et permettent de passer à l'échelle sur des projets qui sont financés par la Banque mondiale avec IDA ou IBRD. C'est un exemple de solutions favorables à la biodiversité, favorables à l'environnement, qui permettent de joindre les forces d'un fonds qui offre des subventions, comme le GEF, et d'IFIs comme la Banque mondiale auprès de tous les pays de la côte africaine. Merci.
Merci, Stephanie. Colin, did you wanted to speak?
Yeah, it's just to support the work program and just to thank the partners for the targeted support for LDCs and SIDS. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Colin. Karen.
Thank you. I just also want to support the work program and also just mention that we're a bit sad that we don't have proper time to discuss and have more details about this. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Laura.
Yes, thank you, Co-Chair. Yeah, we are also welcoming the work program, and I'm especially happy to see the whole of society approach as an inherent part of the majority of the projects. We also commend the projects for having strongly reflected on gender equality through the project design. And we are glad to see that women are not only beneficiaries, but an active part of planning, designing of the projects. And one tiny question also on the work program. It's mentioned that of the two projects which SCCF support, one is a project in Capo Verde, like you mentioned, but which is the other one? I mean, there was no explanation, so thank you.
Thanks, Laura. Sylvia.
Thank you, Tom. Germany welcomes the work program, including the request for funding from the SCCF and the GEF 8. We see this phase with its newly established financing window for non-LDC SIDS under the SCCF as crucial in filling an important programming gap by the GEF. We further welcome the focus on projects in Africa, given the strong need for adaptation and resilience strengthening on the continent. It is also good news that the entirety of technically cleared projects can be financed. We welcome the fact that some countries maxed out their allocation cap with the respective projects presented for approval, as we believe that this helps to create economies of scale and avoid a fragmentation of resources. We note that UNDP receives with 65% of the LDC work bank, again a very high share of resources. This is not meant to question country choice or criticizing UNDP work, but rather to encourage other agencies to step up. considering that MDBs implemented around 43% of the SCCF resources and only 18% of the LDCF resources since the inception of these funds, we see a clear opportunity to better involve MDBs in LDCF operations. As always, we have a set of comments and requests which we will provide in writing. Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia. Rajender?
Thank you, Chair, and our compliments to the Council for putting the proposal. We support the proposal, and we are especially happy to see the proposal for Bhutan, and would request for its approval and support for Bhutan. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Emily?
Thank you. Denmark also supports the approval of this work program. And just like Rajender, we welcome the opportunity to provide support to Bhutan before its LDC graduation this year. We're also pleased to see the focus on locally led approaches in the projects in both Bhutan and Djibouti, as well as the integration of risk management and early warning and forecast systems in Djibouti. We are nonetheless, just like others, concerned about the agency concentration and particularly the lack of MDBs and IFIs as GEF agencies in this work program. And we really urge the GEF Secretariat to continue engaging with MDBs and IFIs on this issue. Furthermore, and in the context of strengthening MDB engagement and IFI engagement, we would like to encourage LDCF, SCCF programming to take risk finance, including insurance mechanisms, into considerations in the project design to ensure that climate risk management is adequately built into project and programming design. And then just finally to highlight Denmark's continued support to the LDCF and SCCF. We've already made a pledge of a total of 300 million Danish kroner in 2022 and 2023, as well as 75 million to the SCCF in 2022 to 2024, as announced earlier. So thank you, and over to you.
Thanks, Emily. Lucrezia?
Thank you very much. I just asked for the floor to thank the Secretariat for the work program, to express our support, and also our express that we're very delighted to see projects presented under the SCCF, and so see the SCCF coming back to life, and especially also a project that shows the strong involvement of the private sector and with a strong potential to mobilize additional funds. Thank you.
Thanks for that. Aaron?
Thank you, Co-Chair. Canada welcomes the work program for the LDCF and the SCCF. We are pleased to see that this work program includes a SIDS project under the SCCF Window A for the first time, offers support to 4 LDCs who are accessing LDCF funds for the first time, and the inclusion of a global project which focuses on innovation and extracting and sharing lessons learned to enhance private sector investment in climate adaptation and innovation. We are pleased to see the focus across the projects on enhancing co-financing and building inclusive partnerships through a whole-of-society approach. We would encourage the LDCF, SCCF to look specifically at whether a project has a dedicated budget set aside for gender equality specialists to support the design, implementation, monitoring, and evaluation of its gender actions plans, as well as regular reporting of the results to advance gender transformation through LDCF and SCCF projects. Thanks.
Thanks, Aaron. Very strong support from Council with a lot of good questions. Go ahead, Chiz. Oh. Judith? Oh, no, Juliet.
Thank you so much. My constituency welcomes the work program that has just been presented. 2 of my member countries have projects that are going to be implemented out of this work program, which is very much appreciated. We've all benefited from resources from LDCF right from the first cycle. We are now in the 3rd cycle, and achievements through implementation of these projects in a very wide spectrum, which range from boosting forecasting infrastructure in the countries, for early warning systems which are not really developed in our countries. So this is helpful because it allows the planning that we need to prevent very many losses due to extreme weather events. So therefore, making sure that the vulnerability to climate change is reduced. The other areas that we've benefited from LDCF related projects also include policy developments, relevant policy developments, such as land use master plans. We know that some hazards are actually avoidable if we have the proper use of land. The benefits can go on and on, but the addition of ecosystem-based adaptation as a new concept into what we are doing is also very much appreciated. It is building resilience of communities who are living in degraded ecosystems, in savannas, in wetlands, and this is looked at as a more sustainable concept since it is implemented at the community level, and it has the effect of allowing the implementation of all the 3 Rio conventions. So the work plan is very much appreciated, and looking forward to more benefits from this. Thank you.
Thanks, Juliet. Cheers.
Thank you very much for the overwhelming support as well as encouraging words. And first and foremost, I'd like to thank the UK as well as Denmark and other donors who have been supportive of both the LDCF and SCCF. And there are many, many donors that are coming to support either the LDCF or SCCF as well as both of them. And in that regard, I think a word of thanks is due to Switzerland, who has been the steadfast supporter of the SCCF, and with your engagement with Ireland, also AOSIS, we had a very successful pledging event in COP27. I just wanted to and send our warm appreciation to the efforts undertaken to support the priorities of CIS and LDCs to address their adaptation needs through the 2 funds. Thank you for the comment from Stephanie as well as Germany, Sylvia, on the necessity for us to be looking into additional agencies. And I just wanted to highlight that in the last work program of GEF 7 for the LDCF, we did actually approve a number of projects that we were hoping to pave the way for very innovative projects to come through from MDBs such as the World Bank, as well as Asian Development Bank and African Development Bank. And we have been in discussions, for instance, with the World Bank, because the project that the Council approved is to align IDA and nature-based solutions, and to really see how that could support national level projects to come to the LDCF and other donors. So we have been having very good conversations with the World Bank, and we're hopeful that in the subsequent work programs that will be presented to you, we would start to see the fruits of those types of interventions and the MDB engagements. And it's also the same for the Asian Development Bank to address the issues of the CIS and African Development Bank looking into issues of insurance. Okay, so there was a specific question from Lara, Finland, and what was the other project for the SCCF? And it's the project that is a multi-trust fund between the LDCF and SCCF. It's for the Challenge Program Global Initiative. So that is looking into the whole notion of what are innovative options, as well as innovative efforts that is being supported through the call for proposal modality. And this particular global project will support the platform global coordination knowledge sharing, as well as trying to get the word on what actually does it mean to do adaptation innovation with the engagement of private sector and other entities. So we're very excited that we have an opportunity to do that. That will be both for the SCCF and LDCF support. Okay. thanks for the encouraging words, and we're very excited, as we said, that we can support Bhutan right before their graduation. And thanks also for Denmark and Emily and others who mentioned the priority for us to be supporting locally led adaptation as well as whole of society approaches. And we also are very encouraged that we're having good initiatives coming through, as also mentioned by Juliet, that would focus on early warning systems, but also looking into the policy frameworks that would enable the early warning systems to become effective and address the needs of the local communities. I think, oh, one more thing, gender. Very important. We have been reporting on this in the work programs. You will hear more about this in the progress report, and we take note of the necessity to really amply support the gender action, not just as beneficiaries, but as stakeholders for decision making as well as program management. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chiz, for all of the comprehensive answers. And I think it is safe to say that Council strongly support this work program. Without further ado, I would like to invite the Council to adopt the draft decision that is included in document GEF LDCF SCCF 3403. It is so adopted. Let's turn our attention to agenda item number 5, progress report on the Least Developed Countries Fund and the Special Climate Change Fund. May I invite Mr. Jason Spenceley and Mr. Alok Barnwall to present the document. Oh, yes.
Sorry, but after Germany intervention on suspending the GEF Council, didn't we agree on just putting the work program and not the rest of the agenda?
It's all of the essential that we need to finish as quickly as we can, and then we will right away go into the GEF Council.
Do we need legally to get into the progress report? I can understand about the budget.
We can actually do this in 5 minutes, but the budgets and so on, those two items, without considering those items, then we will have, I would call it a fiscal crisis.
In that case, I feel very sorry for the GEF Secretariat, but please be quick in your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have the presentation up? Okay.
Get started.
Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity to present a very abbreviated version of the progress report on the LDCF and the SCCF. First, the LDCF. The LDCF has continued to progress well in terms of pledges, receipts, new approvals, as well as CO endorsements and approvals. The financial summary presented in this slide is further detailed in the specifics of the report itself. We are extremely grateful that 93.9 million in new funds has been pledged to the LDCF during this reporting period from 6 countries. Specifically, we would like to convey our appreciation to Belgium, Germany, Netherlands, Slovenia, Sweden, and Switzerland. LDCF projects approved since inception of this fund are expected to directly reduce the vulnerability of over 60 million people improve the management of more than 9 million hectares to withstand the effects of climate change, and train over 2 million people. In addition, over 3,000 policies, plans, and processes are expected to be developed or strengthened through this support. Since the GEF started tracking sex disaggregated data at the beginning of GEF 6, 46% of LDCF beneficiaries and 48% of people trained are expected to be female. Since inception, the most common sectoral focus of LDCF projects is agriculture, followed by water and climate information services. Importantly, nature-based solutions is also a common focus. Moving right along, we will now turn to the Special Climate Change Fund. With the sharpened focus of the SCCF articulated in the GEF 8 Climate Change Adaptation Strategy, we are truly excited by the renewed interest in this GEF-managed trust fund. At UNFCCC COP27 in Egypt, 35 million in new pledges were made for the SCCF, and a slightly greater total amount, 39 million, was pledged during this fall reporting period. We're grateful to Canada, Denmark, Germany, Ireland, Slovenia, Switzerland, and the United Kingdom. These pledges are primarily for SCCF Window A, which is focused exclusively on the climate change adaptation priorities of SIDS. However, SCCF's Window B on technology transfer, innovation, and private sector engagement does remain underfunded despite its demonstrated potential for impact and complementarity with other funds for this results area. On expected results, SCCF projects are directly expected to reduce the vulnerability of 8.9 million people, improve management of over 5 million hectares, and train more than 219,000 people. Since the GEF started tracking sex disaggregated data at the beginning of GEF 6, 47% of SCCF beneficiaries and 46% of people are expected to be female. Water, agriculture, and climate information services are the most common thematic focus of SCCF projects, and similar to the LDCF, nature-based solutions is a key important focus for the SCCF. The GEF 8 programming strategy for climate change adaptation includes 3 complementary dedicated programs. All are progressing, and in the interest of time, I will briefly focus just on the second dedicated program. This program aims to enhance outreach and capacity support directly to LDCs and SIDS on planning and programming. A series of regional workshops and thematically focused technical clinics are being delivered to help strengthen LDCF and SCCF programming, including enhancing country ownership, access, and strong project design for adaptation impact. The first of these regional workshop series was held a few months ago in Maputo, Mozambique for Southern African LDCs, and a second regional workshop was held just 2 months ago for 16 Francophone African LDCs in Haiti in Dakar, Senegal, involving over 120 participants. Regional workshops are also being prepared over the coming months in several other regions and sub-regions. The GEF Secretariat has been collaborating actively with the LDC group in designing this program, and we're looking forward to hearing from the LDC chair in a moment. It's now my pleasure to invite my colleague Alok Barnwal to share an update on the Inclusive Assembly Challenge program.
Thank you, Jason, and thank you, Chair, for the opportunity. I would present very briefly the Inclusive GEF Assembly Challenge Program and its latest status. As presented in the last Council meeting, the program, which is developed in run-up to the 7th GEF Assembly in Vancouver, Canada, is an effort to reflect GEF's inclusive approach and commitment to engage with CSOs, indigenous peoples, youth, and other local community groups in delivering Jeff's vision of healthy planet and healthy people. We aim to identify high-impact initiatives which are delivering climate change adaptation and environmental benefits in an inclusive manner. For this, we launched a call for submission of initiatives and received a very strong response with nearly 587 submissions. We have completed the basic screening of these submissions and have shared a long list of projects with the constituencies for their inputs by 7th July. The GEF team coordinating this program is here, and if you need any assistance in this process, please feel free to reach out to us. Please also note that the constituencies can delegate this responsibility to the GEF Secretariat also. The shortlist projects based on your inputs will then be reviewed by a selection committee, which will then decide the winners of the challenge program, which will be announced at the GEF Assembly. Through the Special Climate Change Fund, these winners will receive a small grant to further advance the action. This concludes the presentation of the progress report, and I would like to thank you, Chair and Jason, for the presentation. Thanks.
Madeline, please.
Merci. Bonjour tout le monde. Je vais parler en français. Encore la présentation. Ok, donc juste faire la présentation est en anglais et juste peut-être remercier le conseil et également le secrétariat du FEM pour cette opportunité qui est offerte au Sénégal. Avec la deuxième réunion régionale des pays les moins avancés francophones pour renforcer les capacités du pays en matière d'accès au PMA. Juste aussi cette présentation.
Colleagues, as well known this week, sometimes technology is not a friend. Anyways, the floor is open for...
Je voudrais également dire que cela a permis de couvrir les questions relatives aux priorités en matière d'adaptation des pays, de voir les projets, de voir aussi comment améliorer par rapport au développement des projets
Recording in progress.
Donc, comme je disais, accompagner réellement les participants présents à renforcer le développement des projets pour qu'ils réellement proposent aux aspects d'adaptation. On a aussi parcouru vraiment les modalités de financement des projets sous le fonds PMA et également les aspects relatifs au cycle du projet. Vraiment veiller à ce que comment un projet sous le fonds PMA ait un impact effectif ont été aussi considérés. Durant cet atelier, les pays vraiment ont travaillé sur leur proposition de projet, mettant en avant leurs priorités. Et je pense que c'est une bonne opportunité pour les pays de travailler ensemble et d'avoir le secrétariat du FEM Nous sommes allés aussi sur le terrain où on a visité un projet sur les champs à école mené par des femmes pour montrer réellement les opportunités et les bénéfices de ces projets d'adaptation pour ces populations vulnérables et spécifiquement les femmes. Donc, cela a été vraiment une opportunité que tous les pays ont saluée. Et nous cherchons à voir vraiment comment multiplier ce type d'expérience, de partage d'expérience, et voir aussi comment les membres du Conseil ou leurs suppléants peuvent participer également à de telles rencontres, parce qu'ils sont proches des pays, ils peuvent échanger directement avec les pays et aussi aider les pays à prendre en charge les recommandations du Conseil concernant la mise en œuvre des projets, le développement des projets. Et cela va nous amener vraiment à avoir des projets de qualité répondant aux priorités nationales, répondant aux besoins des bénéficiaires au niveau des communautés. Maintenant, il reste bien sûr à faire le suivi, comme on a eu les projets du Bhoutan, de la Zambie et du Djibouti. C'est aussi voir comment le secrétariat du FAD, avec les membres du Conseil, peuvent continuer à accompagner les pays francophones à finaliser. Et je tiens à souligner que c'était vraiment important d'avoir toute la documentation, d'avoir cette opportunité de discuter en français avec le secrétariat, avec les expertises, avec les membres du conseil qui étaient présents au niveau de la zone francophone. Je vous remercie de votre attention.
Merci, Madeleine, pour votre présentation. Now we open for questions and comments about this progress report. Karen?
Thank you for the brief presentation, really interesting. And thank you for all the work that has gone into this leading up to the meeting and the documents and reports and so on. I just want to say that we are sorry, we obviously respect the will of the Council to do this briefly, but we are sorry that we cannot have a proper discussion about these really important issues. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Karen. Yes, Colin.
Thank you, and probably just to align my constituency with what have been said by the chair of the LDC, and to thank all partners who have contributed to this, and hopefully when we have time we will probably have a much more fuller discussion, but thank you very much for everyone's support, including our Southern Hemisphere countries. Thank you.
Thanks, Colin. Jean? Jean, s'il vous plaît.
Merci beaucoup. Merci à la collègue du Sénégal pour ce feedback. Et nous l'avions eu. Et tous les pays de ma circonscription ont pris part, effectivement, et c'est une très bonne chose et qu'il faut, comme elle a dit, dupliquer au niveau de nos pays. Mon pays a été représenté. Merci.
Merci beaucoup. A quick word from Chiz.
Thank you for the support, and we appreciate the LDC group chair for connecting to share her experience. And I just want to highlight that the workshops are going to be held in other sub-regions. And as Madam Chair indicated, we would very much encourage, if you can, the engagement of council members and advisors to also take that opportunity, as well as council members, to visit and also have an occasion to interact with the stakeholders on the ground that are beyond the agencies, as well as focal points, because we're also including civil society as well as other recommended people from the operational focal points for these workshops. Thank you.
Stéphane.
Oui, merci Tom. Je voudrais simplement rebondir sur la remarque de l'intervenant sénégalaise sur l'importance du multilinguisme et notamment de la francophonie au GEF, puisque c'est non seulement un principe d'équité, mais aussi un principe qui permet au GEF d'accéder à tous les pays, y compris les pays qui en ont le plus besoin, et pour lequel parfois la barrière linguistique peut être une barrière supplémentaire qui s'ajoute aux autres. Et donc c'est vraiment très important pour pouvoir adresser les besoins de tous.
Merci beaucoup, Stéphane. Bien noté. I see no more requests for contributions on this item. May I invite the Council to adopt the draft decision that is included in document GEF LDCF SCCF 3405. It is so adopted. Now we go to the most important, the money. So, agenda item 06, FY24 Administrative Budget and Business Plan for the Least Developed Countries Fund and the Special Climate Change Fund. Since all of us have had a chance to read the document and to consider it, instead of having presentations, the floor is now open for questions and comments with respect to this one. So, as per usual, if you'd like to make contributions on this item, please put up your flag. Seeing none, I would like to invite Council to adopt the draft decision that is included in document GEF LDCF SCCF 3406. It is so adopted. Now we turn to agenda item 07, 4-year work plan, a program and budget for the Independent Evaluation Office of the GEF under the LDCF and SCCF. It is the document GEF LDCF SCCF 34E01. Given the Council's will, the same procedure applies. There will not be a presentation, but Yuha is here and available for comments and questions from Council. For those who would like to intervene, please raise your flags. Stéphane, s'il vous plaît.
Oui, merci Tom. Oui, nous avons une question par rapport à ce projet de programme sur 4 ans, puisque nous notons une forte augmentation du budget de 86% entre 2023 et 2024 et de 97% entre le quadriennum 2020-2023 et 2024-2027. Et donc nous aimerions avoir plus de précisions sur les justifications de cette hausse. Alors on comprend bien sûr qu'il y a des coûts liés à l'embauche de personnel et à la montée en puissance de ce programme. On aimerait quelques justifications un peu plus étayées par des chiffres. Merci.
Merci Stéphane. Karen?
Just to support the question raised by France. Thank you.
I see no more flags. So Yuha, une bonne question.
Okay, thank you very much and good morning to everybody. I somehow anticipated that this question might come up. The justification is really the fact that the portfolio has been constantly maturing, and there's more programs, and the portfolio has been growing. You have seen what we have allocated for the specific evaluations in this case, but the biggest difference really is the staff cost, which we have consistently underplayed in the past years. And I think that a year ago, when we had the same discussion, so I highlighted our position that we would be coming back with a little bit more realistic accounting of the staff cost. We have a senior evaluation officer, Anna Wig, here next to me, who is dedicating a very substantive amount of her time, maybe 50% of her time to LDCF and SCCF. And we have an evaluation analyst who is also working on this. So I wanted to just put these figures at the table because they are the real figures rather than what we have been presenting in the past, where we have basically absorbed the staff costs mostly to our own IEO budget. I hope this clarifies.
Thank you, Juha. Is the response acceptable? In that case, since there are no other requests for the floor, I invite Council to adopt the draft decision that is included in document GEF LDCF SCCF 34E01. It is so adopted. With that, colleagues, congratulations again for a very effective running of the LDCF SCCF Council. Karen's point about the critical importance of LDCF SCCF having enough time for consideration is very well noted. And I'm just happy that we have gone through all of the items so that, one, our service to LDCFs and SIDS, LDCs and SIDS continue, and that Juha will be able to tell us that we're doing a good job with the augmentation très importante du budget. Merci beaucoup tout le monde. Now we adjourn, suspend the LDCF SCCF Council, and we reopen. At the request of certain people, we'll take a 20-minute break before we reopen the GEF Council to consider the very important historic documents. So you have 20 minutes. The more that you're on time, the more we'll be able to create history together. Thank you.
Now we open formally once more the 64th GEF Council meeting with the agenda item related to the GBFF. As I would like to indicate council members that this is our last day. We can be as long as you wish today, but there won't be any possibilities to expand this council meeting into tomorrow. So I really encourage every single council member to do their best in order to take a decision. Evidently, the decisions are going forward with a package or not having a decision with regards to this agenda item. But this needs to be done today. That's my first point. The second point is that I will open the floor to work based on the revised text that was worked last night. I would like to go around to hear views from the different council members with regards to the revised text. And after we go around, we can take whatever decision the council believes is the right and appropriate in order to generate the proper conversation dialogues, and we can take a decision on these very important agenda items. So I'll pass it over to William, which will be helping us with the list of speakers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I give the floor to Erin.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, colleagues. We've spent a lot of time together over the past few days talking about this important fund. Canada appreciates that all countries have come to the table with strong views, which we feel is reflective of how seriously we take this work and our commitment to a positive outcome here in Brasilia. So we can take this fund forward to our ministers for ratification at the GEF Assembly in Vancouver in August. I think we have seen all sides make some compromises here on issues that matter to them. We have seen adjustments to the DSI text. We have seen adjustments to paragraph 17 in the voluntary nature of the fund and Article 20 language. We have engaged on proposals around bodies that will provide advice to the GBFF Council. We have reflected on the roles of MDBs, IFIs, and philanthropies. I understand last evening a small group meant to integrate proposals into the GBFF documents. It is our view that this work was done in good faith, and while we still have some steps to take together in terms of refining language and reaching final agreement, we feel that this is a good basis to continue discussions. I also understand that for many, including Canada, it is a must that we move forward now to consider final issues as a package today. It is critical for Canada, and we feel for many others, that we agree to both establishing the fund and the programming directions together at this meeting here in Brasilia. While there are still some issues that could be decided by the first GBFF Council session, countries at COP15 asked us to set up this new fund as efficiently, as quickly as possible, so delays are not acceptable. We must fulfill this mandate. So in this spirit, and to start our discussions, we would like to reflect on a few issues. On Brazil's proposal yesterday to reflect more ambitious language on IPLCs in the programming directions, while we know having more time to consider such an important proposal would be ideal, we can understand the importance of Brazil's proposal. As a country who also prioritizes leadership by and reconciliation with our Indigenous communities, Canada can support the inclusion of an aspirational target for resource allocation to support actions by IPLCs to provide multiple benefits for targets of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. It is also our view that we need to further consider the other elements of resource allocation. For example, we need to see percentages to guide allocations of the funds to countries that are least developed and small islands, again, as per direction by the COP at COP15. On the auxiliary body proposal, our understanding is that this is to be comprised of GBFF Council nominated members to provide advice on issues technical in nature and with membership reflecting developing countries with rich and unique biodiversity and other recipient countries. While this proposal needs further work and a TOR that will be discussed by the GBFF Council at their first meeting, we see this as a step towards landing an agreement here today on the fund. We all need to see ourselves in this package. We are here to support each other in implementing the Global Biodiversity Framework, and we look forward to hearing others' views this morning on how they envision this final package. Hopefully in time today so we can have a caipirinha together this evening.
Thank you, Erin, for that invitation. Richard, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Like Canada, I'd like to express appreciation for the extensive effort that's gone into the discussions over the last few days over on the GBFF. This has been, I think, challenging at times. We're all a bit tired, but I think it's been an essential process to reach a common understanding of our perspectives. But it's all been based on a broader recognition of the goal we're trying to reach, which is to provide additional funding to biodiversity and maximise that funding to biodiversity to meet the gap needs as identified at COP15. On the proposal from Brazil, which we had discussed at a session to support to Indigenous peoples and local communities, we strongly support this. It's already embedded in the document, but we see significant value in raising the profile of IPLCs and the expectation that IPLCs will be a significant part of the engagement in terms of biodiversity projects, but also support through or for IPLCs. We strongly support an aspirational target for funding of IPLCs. We understand there's not good data presently on the spending on IPLCs under GEF 7 and GEF 8. So it's hard to actually understand the impact of that, but we understand that a 20% aspirational target is both achievable, but also a stretch to make sure that that can be delivered. As part of that, we suggest that consideration be given by the Secretariat to, under the Biodiversity Fund, to track that and get a better understanding of what's actually been achieved, as well as the engagement, but the spending through and on IPLCs. I am confident, like Canada, that we can achieve an outcome here today. We're all working in a spirit of moving towards a consensus, and my sense is that we're very close. There's only a few remaining points to work through. One of the issues I see that we have been discussing is around support through the IFIs and philanthropy. This really highlights to me the need to differentiate this fund from existing mechanisms and try to tackle the past problems that we have been trying to deal with the lack of being able to generate or mobilise funding on biodiversity. This is a challenge. So we need to demonstrate that this fund is doing something different, and in particular through the IFIs, but also philanthropy and private sector, we need to drive them to provide that additional funding. So the proposals we have been discussing, I think, seeks to reach a balanced position of driving that change, providing the mechanism to do that, but also an expectation attached to that that we can measure and assess over time. From our perspective, I've already mentioned that the importance of SIDS and LDCs. We've got that direction from COP about the particular needs of SIDS and LDCs, and that's been a key part of the discussion, and we would support a strong allocation that reflects that, that direction. I look forward to the discussion today, and looking forward to it all being wrapped up today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Stéphane, you have the floor.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Donc, je voudrais tout d'abord soutenir les interventions de mes collègues du Canada et de l'Australie, et rappeler également qu'effectivement, depuis 2 jours, nous avons beaucoup discuté en petits groupes, dans les couloirs, dans les petites salles, au restaurant, et que toutes ces discussions informelles nous ont permis de mieux comprendre nos positions respectives, de mieux comprendre nos priorités, et de faire quelques petits pas l'un vers l'autre. Et je pense qu'il est maintenant important de se retrouver dans ce format plus large pour rendre compte, take stock, comme on dit, rendre compte entre nous et aussi au monde extérieur qui nous regarde, des avancées que nous avons engendrées et des priorités que nous continuons à chacun à porter. De ce point de vue, quelles sont les attentes de la France? La première, je pense, elle a été répétée par mes collègues, c'est que, conformément à ce que nous avons été très nombreux à dire lundi lorsque nous avons ouvert ce point d'agenda, les 2 documents, à la fois le document sur l'établissement du fonds et le document sur les orientations de programmation, forment un ensemble, forment un package, qui ne peuvent être adoptés que conjointement ou ne pas l'être du tout. Pour être même un petit peu plus clair et un petit peu plus explicite, pour de nombreux pays donateurs, le document sur la programmation est le plus important des 2, et c'est celui qui déterminera ou non notre capacité à contribuer financièrement et à quelle hauteur. Et donc dès lors, si l'on en venait à disjoindre les 2 documents, on pourrait être dans une situation où les pledges financiers seraient reportés de plusieurs mois, voire au-delà, et alors que beaucoup d'entre nous voudraient être en mesure d'annoncer des contributions dès Vancouver. Et je pense que personne n'a à y gagner. Nous voulons tous non seulement mettre en œuvre ce fonds, mais le mettre en œuvre le plus vite possible. Dire que nous n'avons pas le temps de négocier ce document aujourd'hui ou que c'est trop complexe et trop compliqué n'est pas une raison suffisante, et qui surtout ce n'est pas une raison qui est à la hauteur de l'enjeu. Maintenant, sur le fond, nos priorités par rapport à ces documents, ça ne surprendra personne, nos priorités sont exactement les mêmes que celles que nous avons portées à Montréal, sont exactement les mêmes que celles que nous avons portées il y a à peu près 1 an à FEM 8. La biodiversité, premier objectif. Les PMA et les PEID, deuxième objectif. La diversification des agences d'implémentation, troisième objectif. Au terme de plusieurs journées de négociations à FEM8, nous avons eu l'impression d'être entendus sur ces trois priorités qui ont effectivement enregistré quelques progrès. Et par conséquent, nous avons rempli notre part du marché, nous avons fait ce qui était attendu de nous, nous avons augmenté notre contribution de 40% à 300 millions d'euros. Et avec d'autres participants, avec d'autres donateurs, nous avons ainsi pu contribuer à une reconstitution historique de FEM8. Aujourd'hui, par rapport à ce nouveau fonds, nous souhaitons vraiment, ardemment, être dans une position similaire qui nous permettra d'être au rendez-vous et de collectivement remplir la tâche qui nous a été assignée par la COP15. Et donc pour cela, nous espérons que ces priorités, qui encore une fois restent les mêmes, l'accent porté aux pays les plus vulnérables, c'est-à-dire les PMA et les SIDS, et la diversification des agences d'implémentation, ce qui suppose d'augmenter le poids relatif des BMD, soient entendus. Et point important, il ne s'agit pas d'une priorité de la France seule, il ne s'agit pas même d'une priorité d'un groupe de bailleurs, il s'agit d'une requête que nous adresse la COP15. Je ne vais pas vous reciter les paragraphes, mais si, quand même, je vais vous les reciter. Paragraphe 36 de la stratégie de mobilisation des ressources et la cible 19 du cadre de biodiversité. Je pense vraiment que nous pouvons obtenir un accord sur ces deux points aujourd'hui. Nous sommes prêts à y consacrer tout le temps et l'énergie nécessaires. Nous sommes prêts également à faire non seulement preuve d'ouverture d'esprit, mais également de créativité. Nous avons entendu plusieurs propositions nouvelles sur la création d'un organe de gouvernance, sur une meilleure prise en compte des IPLC. Certaines de ces demandes ont été formulées il y a à peine 24 heures, et pourtant, nous les avons saisies au vol et nous les avons abordées de manière, comme l'ont dit mes collègues encore une fois d'Australie et de Canada, de manière constructive. Et aujourd'hui, il y a, je crois, sur la table, sur le dernier draft, des éléments qui permettent de prendre en compte ces nouvelles approches, encore une fois, totalement créatives. En retour, encore une fois, pour nous, le plus important, c'est que nos priorités en termes d'allocation des ressources soient entendues afin que très prochainement, dès cette année, la France et d'autres soient en mesure d'abonder ce fonds et de le rendre opérationnel très rapidement. Merci.
Thank you very much. Rob, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. I am sensing a really good spirit in the room. I think we're making progress. I think we've had an incredibly productive but also difficult conversations over the last few days, and I think we now need to get it done, and we're here to make a deal, and we really want to see this happen. I said at the beginning that we were willing to work night and day to make this happen, and that's actually what we've done. And so we are really, really excited about the interventions from our colleagues just before now. I think we strongly support the intervention from Canada. We strongly support the intervention from Australia. We strongly support the intervention from France. We also totally agree that this is a package deal. We need to bring this all together. We need to all come in, to a compromise. I think I think the idea here is this is an innovative fund, that we bring more resources. The whole point of this fund is to bring more resources to this issue, to be innovative. That's why the MDB, the working with MDBs, and really pushing, it's really pushing the MDBs to really be more creative and pushing them to come and giving them an incentive to come and really make this work. Because we think through MDBs, or IFIs, we'll be able to really, that's a way that we think we'll be able to generate even more resources. We also one of our very strong positions is to support, as everybody's heard, is to support LDCs and SIDS in a way that I think, in a more fulsome way. They're really vulnerable, they really need our support, and I think that's really important for us. So I mean, I'm not gonna I'm not going to talk a lot because I think we need to be really efficient. We need to move forward. I really look forward to the Caipirinhas later on. So those are. I just wanted to support the spirit in the room and the interventions, and I guess I'll stop there. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Annette, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Okay. Yeah, Germany is also extremely committed to get this done today. We are very committed to having a fund. As you might remember, my Secretary of State was also negotiating actively, and the CBD, it's really dear to his heart. So that's my basic instruction here. For us, everything that was said from the colleagues before me on the floor, we strongly support. There are lots of movement from our side and willingness to get this done on all the topics that were mentioned, including the proposal from Brazil that was tabled yesterday night on indigenous people, and very, very important to us, and we surely find a solution to that. There are basically 2 points from our side that we are also very much wedded to, and as my US colleague said, it's important to actually move forward with this fund and have some transformational change happening. So this is the point about the IFIs as a global portfolio target or window, and it needs to be something that actually delivers. So that means it needs to be something that can be enforced, can be implemented by the GEF Secretariat, and it needs to deliver on private sector mobilization, because that's what we all need. We need additional funds coming to the table. And the other topic is obviously, like everybody else said before, that's really important to us, is the share for LDC seats. And, but I think we are extremely open to many, many of the suggestions we've heard on the other topics, and very willing to come to a conclusion tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Annette. I give the floor now to IPAG.
Thank you, Chair and Co-Chairs. We express gratitude and fully support the statements made by Canada and Australia acknowledging IPLC's potential for impact and the necessity for resource allocation in their favor. Previously, IPAG mentioned about the glaring contrast between indigenous peoples' contribution to biodiversity and the level of funding reaching them, and the inadequacies that occur where intermediaries lack the trust of indigenous peoples and their communities. We would like to share briefly where indigenous peoples are in terms of funding schemes, and hopefully this will contribute further in designing the GBF fund's direction. In April this year, the Asian indigenous peoples, following the extensive national and regional consultations, established the Indigenous Peoples of Asia Solidarity Fund, following the launching of the $1.7 billion pledge in 2021 during the UN Climate Change Conference. This provided direct access to indigenous peoples to address specific challenges relating to access to external funds, such as language and literacy barriers, restrictions by governments, stringent audit and reporting requirements, and capacities in monitoring and reporting that are often overlooked by funders and donors. The IPAS Fund have key principles that shape its being, including accountability, of course, transparency, social inclusion, and cultural and gender sensitivity, but defined by indigenous peoples themselves. We can share to the Council what these definitions are, particularly on the detection of corruption, making available guidelines in languages understandable to indigenous communities, support for indigenous women, and differently abled persons. We do not use persons with disabilities, but we use differently abled persons. Likewise, operational guidelines, monitoring and learning, and sustainability, including processes made simple in terms of completion of requirements and reporting formats, and strengthening the resilience and independence of indigenous peoples' organizations. Our counterparts in Latin America have established their own Mesoamerican Territory Fund, similar to the Indigenous Peoples of Asia Solidarity Fund. So whatever initiatives that IP networks have established, the GEF's programming direction can certainly explore complementary roles that these indigenous peoples' funding modalities can contribute, including possibly the GBFF's flexibility in financial flow, and what this meeting will put in place prior to our General Assembly in Vancouver. Finally, we ask Council that projects affecting indigenous peoples' territories, however purporting to have the interests of environment and communities in mind, but lack the full and effective participation of indigenous peoples, be disapproved. GEF-funded projects without FPIC will lead to breakups of people-nature nexus that is central to indigenous peoples and biodiversity protection. We can forward our more details on this to the Council. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Laura from Colombia.
Gracias, William. Voy a hablar en español. Quisiera recordar un poco de dónde venimos. Si bien el acuerdo que tuvimos en la COP de biodiversidad fue en diciembre del año pasado, quiero recordarles que duramos 4 años negociando el marco global de biodiversidad. Y esta negociación fue un proceso inclusivo que compromete a todos los actores, públicos, privados, comunitarios, y tuvimos la oportunidad de discutir con todos. Y acordamos ser ambiciosos en el marco, teniendo en cuenta que para poder cumplir el marco debíamos ser ambiciosos en los medios de implementación. Y los que estuvieron ahí, y los que no también, recuerdan que tuvimos unas discusiones largas sobre los medios de implementación y cómo necesitábamos el compromiso de todos, y especialmente el apoyo para todos los países en desarrollo. Todos tenemos la responsabilidad de cumplir el marco, pero en los países en desarrollo tenemos una responsabilidad aún mayor. Estamos en una crisis, en la triple crisis, y eso nos exige de nosotros una respuesta rápida, pero una buena respuesta. No podemos tener una respuesta rápida que no sea efectiva. Hablamos de la eficiencia y la efectividad de la inversión de los recursos. Y estoy de acuerdo con lo que acaban de decir, necesitamos un cambio transformacional. Y ese cambio transformacional no va a ser sencillo. Todos tenemos que hacer el cambio transformacional. Tenemos que ser innovadores no solamente en las medidas para detener la pérdida de la biodiversidad, sino también para utilizar los mejores medios para hacerlo. Y queremos que todas las voces sean escuchadas. Es un marco que tiene mucha ambición y que responde a esta crisis que no da espera. Para los países con más biodiversidad hay una responsabilidad gigante. Y en el caso de mi circunscripción, para los países amazónicos hay unos retos enormes y los hemos visto, los hemos vivido, los hemos apoyado en los proyectos del GEF, pero también hemos visto que tenemos unos retos y unas oportunidades aún mayores. En este caso, especialmente para los países amazónicos, y acabamos de escuchar al representante de pueblos indígenas, es muy importante tener en cuenta los pueblos indígenas y las comunidades locales que están en nuestros territorios. Nosotros los oímos durante toda la negociación del marco global de biodiversidad, poniendo sus posiciones, participando con nosotros en las discusiones. también los oímos durante el proceso de negociación del GEF 8 y los hemos oído acá, no solamente los representantes de pueblos indígenas, sino también el representante del Foro de Pueblos Indígenas de Naciones Unidas, que representa, entiendo, todos los pueblos indígenas del mundo. Entonces creo que es importante entender esa complejidad y esa ambición a la cual nos hemos propuesto. Yo creo que Tom y yo agradecemos la disposición de los últimos 2 días en la discusión de los pequeños grupos. No fue fácil. Es la primera, pues muy pocas veces me contaron que lo habían hecho en otras ocasiones. Para mí es la primera vez que nos sentamos en un grupo pequeño a discutir estos temas. Con muy poco tiempo, como es usual en las negociaciones, y muchos temas para hablar, pero creo que la intención era poder entender las posiciones de todos y creo que también todos acordamos que trabajaríamos sobre los 7 puntos porque entendemos que esto es un paquete también. Para nosotros es un paquete y debemos verlo en su conjunto. Y sabemos que hay algunos temas que están pendientes, muy pocos, pero que son fundamentales para todos los países en desarrollo y para los países desarrollados. Nosotros hemos tratado de entender esas preocupaciones y de poner unas respuestas juntas para atenderlo. Y por ejemplo, en la propuesta que ha hecho mi circunscripción sobre incluir los pueblos indígenas y comunidades locales con una definición mucho más específica, más allá de un principio, porque sabemos que como principio está incluido el tema de todos los actores y especialmente de pueblos indígenas y comunidades locales. Quiero también aquí de una vez poner sobre la mesa la propuesta específica que hay sobre pueblos indígenas para ser incluida en uno de los párrafos. Me voy a permitir leerla para que todos tengamos la misma información. Given the indispensable role of the IPLCs as stewards of biodiversity, projects to support actions by IPLCs for the conservation, restoration, sustainable use and management of biodiversity by IPLCs will be encouraged on a country-driven basis with a view to collectively achieving an aspirational share of 20% by 2030 from the total amount of resources allocated under the GEF fund, thus enhancing the contributions of IPLCs to the implementation of the GEF. The GEF Secretariat will monitor and track the level of funding allocated to IPLCs. Esto puede ser una propuesta para ver de manera muy concreta reflejado lo que hemos propuesto, pero también lo que escuchamos es apoyado por varios en la sala. Queremos reiterar que esto es un trabajo colectivo, que creo que tenemos todos la intención de sacarlo adelante. Compartimos ese sentimiento de trabajo entre todos, dada la importancia que tiene el fondo. Queremos que sirva para todos los países y que nos ayude a cumplir el marco global, teniendo en cuenta la ambición que pusimos ahí. Queremos que sea operativo lo más pronto posible, porque pensamos cuando negociamos el marco global que teníamos 10 años, del 2020 al 2030. Lo acordamos en el 2022, o sea, nos quedan 8 años. Y ahora los medios de implementación van a estar listos en 1 o 2 años, es decir, vamos a tener la mitad del tiempo para cumplir con las metas. De manera que apoyamos las intervenciones anteriores que demuestran esto también, y pues estamos aquí para trabajar, para poder buscar las soluciones que necesitamos para sacar adelante el fondo. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, Laura. Emily, you have the floor.
Thank you, William. Well, from our constituency, we're also really happy to see that we have been making progress and that despite some difficulties, we are now so close to the finishing line. Like all of you, we are also very committed to get this deal done today, and with the GBFF, we really do have the opportunity to do something different and really be innovative. As mentioned earlier, for us this includes increasing the share implemented by MDBs and IFIs, increasing the share going to SIDS and LDCs, as well as to see a stronger engagement with the private sector. And I also just want to echo the comments made just now by Laura, Richard, as well as others on the opportunities for making IPLCs a priority for the GBFF. And just on that, I would like to note that Norway has supported IPLCs in Brazil for the past 40 years, and we want to emphasize the importance of indigenous peoples' roles as champions in protecting biodiversity. According to Mapbiomas, in the last 30 years, IP territories in Brazil lost only 1% of native vegetation, while on private lands, 20% of vegetation was lost. And with that, we would really like to thank Brazil for its proposal. We believe that an aspirational target of 20% of the GBFF to IPLCs would be a very positive move in reversing the negative trend on the biodiversity loss in all corners of the world. And with this, we would like to thank the GEF Secretariat, or to ask the GEF Secretariat to set up a system to monitor the delivery of this aspirational target such that the GBFF Council can be informed and eventually make the changes necessary. So thank you very much, and we really look forward to having the package in place here in Brazil. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Emily. Laura, Mexico.
Hola de nuevo a todas y a todos. Voy a hablar en español. Quiero también hacer eco de las colegas y los colegas que han hablado de los avances que logramos. Creo que en estos días hubo muchas intervenciones honestas, directas y muchas y encaminadas a lograr muchos avances que ya obtuvimos. Creo que nos fue encargado un reto muy difícil, que es constituir acá el fondo con no otro objetivo, sino el objetivo exclusivo de apoyar la implementación de las metas y objetivos del Marco Mundial de Kunming-Montreal de la Diversidad Biológica. Ha sido retador y muy fructífero, y yo quería reconocer en específico una conversación que para nosotros es de sumo valor. Es el que hayamos tenido la oportunidad de discutir con los bancos multilaterales de desarrollo, que son agencias acreditadas del GEF, cómo ellos pueden traer a la mesa oportunidades de hacer blended finance, de traer recursos adicionales a la mesa que nos permitan hacer más con los recursos que tenemos en el fondo, multiplicar esos recursos y tener mayor impacto. Agradecer a todos los que fuimos parte de esas conversaciones para lograr que esto se puede hacer, que estos bancos quieren ser nuestros socios en hacer esto sin requerir a los países beneficiarios el adquirir más deuda, que por supuesto es algo que no es posible para los países más vulnerables, que ya tienen altos niveles de deuda. Finalmente, quiero apoyar también a Colombia y a los colegas que con anterioridad mencionaron la oportunidad de apoyar más el rol que tienen los pueblos indígenas en la conservación de biodiversidad. Entonces, sumarme a esta propuesta. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, Laura. René, you have the floor.
Yes, Chair, thank you. I'd like to chime in on behalf of Finland on the enthusiasm and the readiness of our constituency to agree on a package. And of course, this very endeavor deals with tackling the triple planetary crisis. And for its focus, of course, it focuses and should focus and must focus on the indigenous people. So we're very supportive of that. It needs to be innovative, and if we want to be innovative, we need more involvement of the IFIs in the MDBs. And I would also call on ourselves to sort of think of a sound and intelligent financial resource mobilization strategy. I'm sure that the Secretariat can play an important role in that, and perhaps hire some expertise to support that process. It needs to be for all, and that's what I really would like to underline. if it needs to be for all, we also need to make sure that there are certain safeguards in the way we're operating, and that's also why we attach importance to having a percentage, an ambitious percentage for the SIDS and the LDCs. It needs to be for all, so we also very much welcome making sure that the countries, a lot of countries in Africa that not around here at the table, are somehow also heard in the process, in an auxiliary or what kind of a body. So that's all very good. So we're ready to agree on a package, and let's get it done.
Thank you, René. Juliette, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. Allow me to appreciate the very honest manner in which we conducted our discussions yesterday. I think the whole of the time that we spent in the small room was a very big chance for me to actually learn more, understand more about where we are as members, really, regarding the establishment of the GBFF and what we perceive as very important for us all. And again, this is for us all because we are all interested in making sure that the fund is, first of all, established, but most important, is well funded. I think we've all been around for long enough to see environment funds that have no funds. And this is the worst that we would like to see. We want to see a fund that is really well funded in order for us to access the funding, to do the very much ambitious targets that we have in our respective countries. I don't think I need to, again, bore you with the country, the specific, needs that we have as members of my constituency, as a member of the LDC. So the LBFF comes in as a source of hope that we can actually do much more in restoring the lost biodiversity. So that said, we have made progress already. We are almost there. And I think we just need to be there with a sense of understanding from each other, the kind of needs that we have. Our colleagues who have like a lot of biodiversity to take care of have their particular needs. My country, for instance, has a particular need and many East African countries which serve as corridors for very unique biodiversity. They're very unique, they are getting endangered, that's the only habitat that they have to survive, and yet the governments are struggling to raise finances to make these biodiversity well protected. So that is a need that is out there, and we need to approach this from a very point of understanding. For once, I want to think like a developed country. Like a developed country, if this is a fund that we are that we are talking about genuinely, and we want it to function, and we all want, in the sense of implementing the decisions that we made in the COP, we are all serving our local, our populations. Our people demand us to do what we are supposed to be doing for them. There are certain demands that my people need to see from me. But I believe even from our colleagues from the developed countries have certain demands which we honestly have to take care of and make sure that we come together as a council that is putting in place proper measures to have the fund that has funds and the fund that caters for individual, circumstances, because we have different circumstances where we are coming from. We have a common goal of implementing the 30 by 30 targets, a common goal of promoting biodiversity conservation, but we are not in the same boat, that's for sure. We could be in the same waters, we are not in the same boat in this regarding the circumstances that we are in. We are here for good intentions, and we want to engage more to see how we can put this to life. But I'm very confident that we are going to make this work. This morning I was consulting my minister, who was co-chairing the subcommittee on resource mobilization in the COP15, and she's only encouraging that the council meeting just, she co-chaired this with the minister from Germany, and she was only encouraging that the same spirit that we had in Canada in COP15 is the same that is the same that we continue having here in Brazil, and make sure that we come up with a performance or programming approach and criteria that is fit for purpose, that is going to bring meaningful resources down to the countries. We are particularly supportive of the innovative approach because we know that for sure grants are not going to be there forever. And even if they were there forever, they cannot be enough. So the more blended this becomes, the more realistic it becomes. And I believe we can see what really makes, for lack of a better word, makes more sense for us and move here with a meaningful decision. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I give the floor to Judith.
Gracias. Desde la circunscripción del Cono Sur hemos participado de las consultas previas, de las deliberaciones durante estos días, no solo de las informales, sino también del Consejo, y hemos expresado nuestro interés de que este fondo pueda ser alcanzado por todos los países en desarrollo. Si bien muchas veces se han indicado la diferencia que puede haber entre unos y otros, pero también la biodiversidad está distribuida de forma diferente, y es por ello que todos necesitamos acceder de alguna u otra manera a fondos de una manera que sea operativa, con mecanismos innovadores, sí, pero los mecanismos innovadores, como hemos visto, no se refieren solamente a cómo conseguir nuevos fondos, sino también a cómo operacionar este nuevo fondo desde la gobernanza. Por eso también celebramos que los pueblos indígenas y las comunidades locales tengan una especial atención en este documento. También hemos visto durante estos días un espíritu de compromiso y flexibilidad, no solo por parte de los donantes, sino también por parte de los receptores. Así que estamos comprometidos a trabajar y de que este fondo se pueda activar lo antes posible para beneficio de todos. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, Judith. Now we're going to turn to Gisela on the Zoom.
Thank you, William. Can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you, William. Let me thank, first of all council members who engaged in the past days and nights, I have to say, in the consultation to find out a common ground on these two documents as a package. And this is a real sincere gratitude from my side, being so far from, physically at least, from you. What I heard in all intervention is something that really I love. Because what I heard is the intention and the real goodwill to create, to establish a fund, but something innovative, something that can bring something new in the financial climate architecture. And concrete examples are for example, the allocation to IPLC, have them on board and give them an important role is something that is really innovative. The inclusion of private sector and philanthropies, the proper attention to LDCs and seeds, and also the role to all life advisors. So I think that all these elements really represents a big innovation and the real value added of these funds. So I wish sincerely that we are able to come to a conclusion and to come to an agreement tonight on these funds. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Baji, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair. It was a pleasure to discuss on this matter. As you know, since 3 days ago, we have been discussing about this important agenda. And while I align myself with the contribution from colleagues from France, Canada, USA, Germany, among others, as I sit here representing a constituency of 9 countries, diverse and rich biodiversity, the coming of this allocation of this fund to support the countries is very important and critical at this moment. For my colleagues, my constituency constitute a very diverse and challenge with respect to the biodiversity, land degradation, and climate change, which has and still impacting negatively on the lives and livelihood of our people. Therefore, as I said, the issue of addressing this key aspect is very, very important for us. And as I said earlier on, the allocation of this fund for LDCs and SIDS is highly appreciated and welcome. However, over the few days that the discussion is going on, I think it is important as GEF council members who flew all over the world to come here on a common agenda. That is, we're going to take decisions that are going to impact positively to the lives and livelihood of people, the millions of people that are behind us, or that really rely on our decisions to make an impact in their livelihood. So, Mr. Chair, distinguished council members, I want also to look at this biodiversity issue from a global context. And in that, every part of this world has a biodiversity that is unique and needed to be guided. For instance, I want to share something. A month ago, I participated in a webinar on a topic, environmental management in the Gambia, challenges and way forward. Looking at the challenges from a holistic perspective and in view of the involving marine scientists and other experts, it will be interesting for you to know, out of the 9, according to what some of those experts mentioned, out of the 9 mangrove species known globally, 7 are found in the Gambia, that tiny little country with almost 11,300 kilometers square. So this actually applies to every part of this globe. So we have to look at this thing from that perspective and realize that addressing environmental issues from one end does not solve the other. We have to look at it from a global point of view. And with that spirit, since on Monday also, we are talking about GEF families, family spirit. And I hear when we're here, we have to look at from that perspective. The mere fact that we're going to be a little bit more territorial, that has defeated the purpose of why we are here. And I think we have to look at this thing and support. We are not saying give us everything, but we are saying give us something that is going to really impact meaningfully to the life and livelihood of our people. So, as I conclude, since on Monday we're talking about GEF family, which means we share issues of common goal to save our planet Earth, irrespective of differences in various. As a family, we call ourselves. I hope we can come to agreement that will support our countries or our regions in a way that is considered to be equitable for us to thrive. I thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you very much. Laverne, you have the floor.
Thank you. I'm beginning to wonder if I have much to say after listening to Juliet and Banji's intervention. The presentation that was made during our discussions regarding the indigenous peoples and local communities, although new, we recognize the importance of it, particularly for our counterparts in Brazil. Ironically, there are indigenous peoples in my constituency as well. May not be as much as you would find in Latin America, but they are there. And so we have always tried our best to integrate them into our initiatives, and that will continue. And so, however we come out at the end of how we will support those particular communities, we are there, and we will be capitalizing on that opportunity. In reference to the discussions on the IFIs, a lot of concessions have been made, and there were concerns. We are developing countries in my constituency, there's 16 of us, and we have our challenges regarding the debt issue, and so we appreciate the discussion that has been undertaken, and I think we're in agreement that the aspect of lending will be removed from the documents. We have considered modifications to the governance structure, which provides inclusivity and await the TORs that would guide the process. However, there still remains agreement on the increase in the support to LDCs and SIDS. As mentioned, the restoration of ecosystems is part of the preservation of lives and livelihoods in these countries. For those of us surrounded by water, our largest jurisdiction is our oceans and seas that provide the ecosystem of our marine biodiversity. Like others here, we have ministers to whom we must give account, who see biodiversity, preservation and conservation as vital to the sustainability of life in our respective countries that make up the constituencies. An increase in the support to LDCs and SIDS will show real support to the unique challenges and increased costs to undertake necessary restorative work required in biodiversity in light of the remoteness and high costs of transportation to reach the countries and the respective sites for the interventions. Our ministers want to see from these discussions regarding the fund commitment to the LDCs and SIDS. We have made our proposal in reference to the percentage and have made a concession and shown willingness to have the uptake assessed after 2 years, where funds, if not adequately used, can be reallocated. We have always said that GEF is a family, where families work well when there is partnership and consideration. We look forward to that consideration as we continue to discuss. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Laverne. I give the floor to Colin.
Thank you very much for giving me the floor, and just to contribute to the discussion, and I sense that we have, I think we just need to build on the positive momentum that we have going forward, and certainly for us, we see the fund as people-centered and focused on especially the vulnerable, the least developed country, the small island developing states. And of course, for us, I come from a country where more than 90% of our population are indigenous. 80% of our population live with nature. They are basically out in the rural area. Certainly for us also, the numbers in terms, the allocation that our partners have given, it more or less gives us hope. We have just heard about the STAP report, the science, which basically tells us that within 5 years we will be reaching that 1.5 degrees, which place us even in a much more difficult situation. This is why I think the urgency of ensuring that we come to some agreement at this council is important. We need to continue to give hope to our people, and certainly especially for the environment that my constituency come from, in the sense of the ocean, where we much of the tuna that the world gets is basically also from our waters. We also would like to see that the health of the ocean continue to be preserved. Our unique diversity is basically about our survival, so we really need to ensure that the loss that is happening at a fast pace is reduced. So certainly we thank our partners for their hand of friendship, the hand of assistance. It has a human face to it. We embrace it, and we ask all of us to really come together to really ensure that we take care of our people, take care of our planet by coming to a decision on and concluding all the arrangements, all the discussions that we have, elements that needs to be concluded, and we thank all those who have contributed in terms of putting language for us to come together. With that, I just want, before I conclude, just to maybe seek some guidance on what are the next steps, because I think we have said what we need to say. It's just the process of trying to land this at the right place. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Rusana, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. First of all, my heartfelt gratitude to all colleagues and of the Council and the GEF Secretariat for devoted hard work during these 2 days in making progress to this document. Today at 7:40 we will receive the agreed text, which is the result of a very hard work of our nature conservation volunteers. Global Biodiversity Framework is 4 goals and 23 targets to be achieved by 2030. The GBF is not a legally binding agreement, but we all have commitments to demonstrate progress toward meeting targets accordingly. We must shift our focus to implementation. The biodiversity financing plans to be developed will present a clear call to action for policymakers and regulators to put in place measures to accelerate change. This would have direct implication for all financial actors. In the result of the operationalization of this GBF fund, it will be possible to ensure mandatory data, including biodiversity information and individual biodiversity footprint in light with nature-related risks. Increased financial flows coupled with harmonized taxonomies and standards. In this case, science-based performance indicators for reversing biodiversity loss will be a key element of sustainable finance taxonomies. And the GBF will enable international alignment and will accelerate the development of sustainable finance policy and regulation in nature and biodiversity, which is vital if the targets and ambitions of the GBF are to be realized. Thank you, and I would like to express my support.
Thank you very much. Ramon, you have the floor.
Gracias. Quería centrar mi intervención un poco en lo que comentaba Laura sobre el nuevo papel de los bancos multilaterales de desarrollo. Creo que es importante enfatizar que recientemente en la cumbre de París sobre un nuevo pacto global sobre financiación, todos los NDBs y muchos de los países que estamos aquí nos comprometimos en realizar un statement sobre el nuevo papel que los NDBs deben tener en la financiación de los retos globales. Y nos comprometimos a avanzar en instrumentos concesionales, teniendo en cuenta el nivel de deuda de algunos países. Y creo que aquí estamos muchos de esos NDBs, hay muchos NDBs aquí, y deberíamos enfatizarles ese papel que deben realizar e integrar la naturaleza en sus actividades. Y les invito a avanzar con pasos decididos a esos compromisos que se adquirieron en París recientemente. Creo que este nuevo fondo del que estamos hablando hoy aquí tiene una característica fundamental, que es diferenciarse, y los NDBs tienen un gran papel que desarrollar ahí. Hemos estado hablando durante largo y tendido durante estos días sobre el foco en diferentes elementos, entre ellos el papel de las IFIs, del sector privado, de la filantropía, de los más vulnerables, de las comunidades indígenas, y yo creo que tiene mucho sentido que avancemos en ese camino. Hubiéramos echado en falta quizá directrices de la Secretaría sobre qué márgenes tenemos, qué rangos, qué solapes habría entre unos objetivos y otros de cara a avanzar más en la discusión, y creemos que es fundamental, como comentaba Estefan, en abordar todas estas cuestiones y los dos documentos como un paquete. Estamos completamente de acuerdo, y mi último mensaje sería que hemos estado conversando estos días y es el momento de dejar un poco al lado las prioridades individuales y centrarnos en las prioridades globales para avanzar y conseguir un acuerdo hoy aquí en Brasil. Gracias.
Thank you. That leaves last speaker. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I would like to align myself with my colleagues from France and USA on their statements. I'm from SEEDS, and we are in the front line of the climate issue and biodiversity losses, and urgent action is needed to ensure that we can remain on our homeland. SEEDS and LDC are being disproportionately and increasingly impacted by biodiversity losses, while our special circumstances make us vulnerable. We have been facing challenge regarding to lack of financial resource, lack of technological capacity, low capacity to develop bankable projects that can be submitted for funding to address environmental issues. We cannot be able to be competitive with other countries. As it was said here, we are in the same sea, but we are not in the same boat. So I would like to draw attention for the all council member in order to review the increasing share proposed to LDC and SEEDS and increase it for even 40%. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So you are not the last speaker. Ben is next, and I won't tempt anybody by saying last speaker. Ben, you have the floor.
Many thanks, William. My apologies for coming in at the very end, but I thought it was really helpful to listen to the comments around the table, and I think they've been really helpful. I think also I'd just like to say that I think there's been really valuable discussions from council members and their constituencies, as many have mentioned, over the course of this week, to get us to this point where we are today. I think there's been, as I said, very useful points around the table this morning, and I think it's really hopeful signals that we can conclude our work today, as Carlos Manuel has requested us to do. I think just to highlight a few points, if I may. I mean, firstly, importantly, as raised by Australia and Canada, but also as elaborated by Colombia, we just want to emphasize the importance of IPLCs, and we strongly support making sure this is properly reflected in the document. Of course, it was reflected in Action Area 2, and IPLCs are being added as observers. but as Laura has proposed some very valuable new language, that's really helpful, I think, to take us forward on this. We welcome the recognition by many, including Colombia, that we need to agree a package deal on this. I think everyone is clear on that. As I have said before, what we're trying to do is faithfully take forward the request from COP15. Other people have mentioned this. One of the key aspects of that was the transformational change and innovative approach that we're trying to achieve through this new fund, as I think Rwanda, Uruguay, and others have mentioned. A key part of that is getting funding from all sources. So it's important to get that, to achieve that innovative approach. So it's very useful in the document. We've got mention of philanthropies and MDBs, IFIs. As many have mentioned around the table this morning, it's also, as COP15 has requested, it's important to recognize the particular circumstances of LDCs and SIDS. I think there's always going to be areas where some people are going to be more happy than others. And I think we've made significant progress over the last few days. I think we've come very close now to a final agreement, and I think we can get to that final agreement. So I think we believe we're almost there, and we can get this over the line. Many thanks, William.
Thank you very much. Ben Rajendra, you have the floor.
Thank you, William. And first and foremost, my thanks to all the volunteers amongst our council members for your team to burning the night lamp and sharing the draft documents early in the morning. A special thanks to all those who were involved in this endeavor. And we feel that it was a common effort to reach a common goal, and all of us have walked a mile in reaching that goal post. As our Norwegian colleague said, that we are very close to finish line, and I'm sure that we will cross the finish line. We all had individual country opinions which may or may not be reflected comprehensively, and they are surely not reflected comprehensively for any country. But then all of us had come together and we have reached consensus points, and I'm sure that one or two things which are left out, we all will reach a common solution which is agreeable and acceptable to all of us. And I think it's a common win for all of us, and that's the great spirit of camaraderie which has been displayed by all of us. And I appreciate each and every member, all of us who have participated in this discussion, this dialogue. It was a great success, and I think we have moved towards the common goal, and we will surely reach there. This is culmination of long discussions which has emanated years before, and I'm hopeful that this culmination would be fruitful, and it will lead us the goal post which we all have commonly and jointly set for ourselves. With these words, thank you, and back to you, William.
Okay, do I see a side? No. Okay, so if nobody else wants to take the floor, then please.
Thank you. I'll do it in Spanish. Muchas gracias a todos por su intervención. Antes que nada, pues quisiera felicitarlos por la decisión de esta mañana. No los pude acompañar esta mañana en la decisión para ratificar BBNJ. De verdad, sinceramente, grandes felicitaciones por eso. El trabajo que tenemos es grande, y las ideas que tenemos en la Secretaría para BBNJ son múltiples, como lo explicó Chis. Yo en lo particular tengo un interés de crear un grupo de landlocked nations para trabajar con ellos fuertemente en temas que tengan que ver con aguas internacionales, así que les agradezco muchísimo. Lo segundo, pues agradecerles esta ronda de intervenciones que han tenido todos ustedes con relación a este nuevo fondo. No es una tarea fácil. El materializar el acuerdo de la COP es complejo. Y por favor, no se sientan frustrados de que llevamos horas y días detrás de este proceso. No se sientan frustrados. Esto es lo normal en un proceso complejo. Pero yo sí quisiera apegar a los principios y los valores más fuertes que este Consejo ha demostrado por 30 años para llegar a una decisión que sea el inicio de un proceso que ayude a todos nuestros países a conservar, a restaurar y a usar sosteniblemente la naturaleza. Creo que esto es un mensaje muy fuerte que quiero yo compartir con todos ustedes. Es difícil. Nunca se pone más oscuro que cuando va a amanecer, y eso es lo que está pasando. El momento más oscuro del día, de la noche, del día, es antes de amanecer, y eso es lo que está pasando. Aún lo anterior, yo tengo 24 horas de estar oyendo que estamos muy cerca, y estamos muy cerca, y estamos muy cerca, y no llegamos. Y creo yo que ya es el momento para que podamos consumar una decisión que sea satisfactoria y que sea consistente con lo que este Consejo ha hecho por 30 años. Sí, han habido temas igualmente complejos como el que vemos esta semana en este Consejo, y lo hemos sacado adelante, y hoy vemos los resultados de lo que el GEF como una gran asociación ha hecho. Veremos en el futuro este día como un día donde entre ese sentido de frustración y optimismo sacamos adelante la tarea. Mi experiencia me indica que lo que procede es lo siguiente. Uno, yo tengo algunas ideas de cómo proceder para poder tratar de llegar a un acuerdo en esos dos temas grandes, importantes que están pendientes. Pero me gustaría, antes de yo proponer algún mecanismo, oír a los miembros del Consejo, si ellos tienen alguna propuesta en concreto de cómo proceder ahora, el procedimiento de cómo vamos a proceder hoy en la tarde, después de escucharlos a todos ustedes. Lo que yo sí recomiendo fuertemente es que aquellos que vayan a participar en negociaciones o en grupos, posiblemente vamos a tener que darles un espacio en las circunscripciones y después tener un espacio entre los consejeros, y ojalá sea entre los consejeros y alternos exclusivamente. Esa es una recomendación muy fuerte que yo doy, que de aquí en adelante las conversaciones sean entre consejeros y alternos. Nosotros estamos a la disposición de todos ustedes, Julián, la abogada, Claude, Chis, y por supuesto el co-chair y el suscrito, estamos a las órdenes de ustedes. Pero bueno, antes de definir qué vamos a hacer, yo quisiera abrir el espacio del Consejo a ver si alguien tiene alguna propuesta en concreto de cómo vamos a proceder a trabajar en la tarde. Si no lo hay, yo tengo una que pues me gustaría ponerla a discusión. Así que yo quisiera abrir el Consejo a ver si hay pues alguna solicitud concreta, alguna propuesta concreta de cómo vamos a proceder en el trabajo que requerimos esta tarde. Gracias. Ok, perfecto. Yo lo que les propongo es lo siguiente. Estamos a las 12:20, tendremos almuerzo. Creo que el almuerzo es un buen momento para que las diferentes circunscripciones toquen bases, redefinen puntos y conversen. A las 2 de la tarde yo quisiera ofrecerles, después del almuerzo, ofrecerles otra vez el Salón Santa Cruz para que consejeros y alternos puedan sentarse a conversar de 2 a 3:30 de la tarde. A las 3:30 de la tarde yo quisiera volver a convocar al Consejo para poder ver en dónde estamos, y de ahí podemos definir las acciones que corresponden para el resto de esta tarde. Si no tienen algún comentario o una observación, me parece que esta es una propuesta muy concreta. Don William. Perfecto. Muchas gracias. Entonces, les pediría muy atentamente a las diferentes circunscripciones que puedan hacer el trabajo interno de cada una de esas circunscripciones durante la hora del almuerzo, y a las 2 en punto de la tarde estará abierta de nuevo el Salón Santa Cruz para que puedan tener las rondas de discusiones. A las 3:30 de la tarde los esperaremos aquí, en donde el co-chair y mi persona pues guiaremos la conversación que tendremos. Es muy importante también comentarles que es evidente y obvio desde mi punto de vista de que las discusiones tienen que ser basadas en el documento mejorado que se llegó a determinar hoy en tempranas horas de la mañana. A mí me parece que es un documento que refleja el avance en las conversaciones y que ese debe ser pues la base de esta discusión. Muchas gracias.